In the high altitudes of northern China, there is one mountain that remains frozen all year round. It's a naturally occurring spot of cold earth. A thick layer of permafrost lies underneath the mountain's top layer of soil, freezing everything above it. The climate-defying pocket of frozen land covers over 26 feet of a mountain slope in Pingchuyen County, a place famous for its scorching hot summers, reaching highs of 90 degrees Fahrenheit. This frozen spot of land manages to survive the blazing temperatures due to the coarse blocky layer of soil covering the permafrost. This coarse soil prevents the hot climate from reaching and melting the permafrost, allowing the ground to stay frozen all year round. Argentina may be famous for its beautiful beaches and hot sun, but in southern Argentina, you can find Perito Moreno Glacier. This stunning blue glacier covers over 100 square miles and is constantly growing. When visiting this natural wonder, you might notice an archway of ice forming off the side of the glacier, reaching out to the nearby land. Suddenly, the archway ruptures and the ice collapses into the water below. This is completely natural. The glacier goes through a process of forming these arches until they collapse. It'll form another one in no time. On California's Glass Beach, there's no sand and only colorful gemstone-like pebbles called sea glass. Surprisingly, these beautiful pebbles are the result of garbage. For decades, the beach was used as a massive dumping ground for locals to abandon their glass, appliances, and even cars on the beachfront. The state eventually prohibited anyone from disposing of their garbage on the beach. Over the years, the waves broke down all the remaining junk and turned it into brightly colored pebbles that attract tourists from all over. The highest waterfall in the world, Angel Falls, can be found in southern Venezuela. The water there travels along one of the biggest tabletop mountains in Venezuela and plummets 2,500 feet down into the jungle below. That's 3 times taller than the Eiffel Tower. The water falls from so high that most of it evaporates into mist before even reaching the ground. Visitors can feel the mist settling on their skin from over half a mile away. In Scotland, hidden away from the main roads and tucked deep within the woodlands, is Fidic Glenn. This area looks like something out of an ancient fairy tale, with looming glass moss-covered rock formations and crimson red waters. The water's red color is due to the red sandstone lying beneath the shallow river. To get to this stunning natural beauty, you have to embark on a dangerous hike down steep, muddy hills, clambering onto trees to stop you from falling. But when you reach the bottom, it'll all have been worth it to watch the sunlight shine off the ruby waters and see the towering rocks of this enchanting world. With bubblegum pink water and a surrounding circle of emerald green forests, it's hard to believe that Lake Hillier is a real place. Located in Western Australia, no one can truly explain why the lake has pink color. However, scientists have theorized that the high quantities of salt in the lake have attracted a salt-loving pink bacteria called halobacteria, responsible for the lake's trademark shade. In a small peninsula in South America, there is one of the most beautiful natural wonders in the world, the marble caves. These look like any other caves from the outside. Inside these caves, the walls consist of smooth, swirling blue marble formations. Over thousands of years, water has eroded the marble deposits within these caves, forming this unique cave system. So while deep blue color seems like it's part of the marble, it's the reflection of the water that causes these blue shades along the cave walls. Azerbaijan's mud volcanoes are exactly what they sound like. Over 300 of these natural phenomena are located in Azerbaijan, more than anywhere else in the world. There have been over 200 eruptions since records began. Mud volcanoes are landforms caused by the eruption of mud, water, and gases. Pockets of gas form underground and force their way to the surface, eventually erupting and splattering mud everywhere. These volcanoes can be pretty dangerous. In 2006, a mud volcano erupted in Indonesia and coated an entire nearby village in thick mud. Pamukkale is a marvelous hillside of tiered thermal pools. The name of the Turkish city translates to Cotton Castle. The pools are made of travertine, a type of limestone that gives the hillside its stunning white color. In addition, the stone has geothermal properties, making the pools hot springs. There are 17 pools in total, and all are open to the public 7 days a week. The temperatures range from 95 degrees Fahrenheit all the way to 212 degrees Fahrenheit. They are essentially nature's version of a hot tub. Legend has it that the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland was formed when a great Irish giant was challenged to battle a Scottish giant. The Causeway was built across the sea so the two giants could meet. When the Irish giant defeated his foe, the Scottish giant ran home and destroyed the Causeway behind him. All that remains are the beginnings of the Causeway at the water's edge. The stunning rock formation of interlocking columns was the result of an ancient volcanic eruption. The columns are a hexagonal shape and form a natural staircase from the Irish Sea to a foot of a cliff. The tallest columns are 39 feet high. The Giant's Causeway is the most popular tourist destination in Northern Ireland, receiving almost 1 million visitors in 2019. Deep within the Nika mines in Mexico, you can find the Cave of Crystals. The cave is full of massive shards of bright selenite crystals. The largest is 37 feet tall. These are some of the largest natural crystals in the world. It's thought that the water that previously filled the cave was incredibly rich in minerals, allowing the crystals to grow to their full potential. Unfortunately, tourists cannot visit the Cave of Crystals due to its scorching temperature and humid conditions. Even scientists are required to have a special permit to enter the cave. The River of Five Colors is located in the Colombian province of Meta. Known locally as the Rainbow River, the waters are famous for their striking colors. The river is variously colored yellow, green, blue, black, and most prominently red from summer till winter. Due to a lack of nutrients, the river's water is naturally clear, so it's easy to see diverse and colorful plant life on the riverbed. It's these vibrant plants that give the waters its many colors. In New Zealand, you can take a boat ride through the beautiful Waitomo Caves. The walls of the caves glow luminescent, like bright stars against the night sky. But these glowing lights aren't stars, they're worms. Luminescent glowworms live in the walls of the cave, giving the cave its trademark glow. The particular species of glowworms cannot be found anywhere else in the world. For thousands of years, the fairy chimneys have stood tall in Cappadocia, Turkey. These unusual rock formations are tall, thin spires of rock that were initially formed by lava. The tallest chimney is 130 feet high. Humans have hollowed out the insides of these rocks for hundreds of years to create homes for themselves. Today you can visit one of the many hotels that currently exist inside the fairy chimneys. Wave Rock is a popular spot for a photo shoot in Western Australia. The giant rock is 46 feet tall and shaped like a breaking ocean wave. Millions of years of strong winds and hard rainfall eroded the rock into the wave-like shape it has today. The rock has a stunning mix of red and gray colors caused by minerals washed down the rock. The site of the Wave Rock has become a famous camping ground due to its proximity to beautiful lakes and a variety of wildlife. The Zanyi National Geopark in China has previously been voted one of the most beautiful landscapes in the world. The park is famous for its colorful rock formations, popularly known as the Rainbow Mountains. Layers of minerals and different colored sandstone were slowly pushed together across 24 million years to create the stunning landscape.
Throwing a snowball to your friends, putting a carrot on the snow person of yours, skating, and many more. It's the snowy winter spirit. Here's some facts about snow. Surprisingly, snow can come in different colors. Let's start with yellow snow. If it starts snowing when flowering trees are already in bloom, pollen is in the air too. Besides giving you allergies, it lands on snow-covered surfaces. In this scenario, snow blends with pollen, which results in this suspiciously yellow shade. The snow clouds can carry sand particles too. Yellowish-tinged snow was seen in South Korea in March 2006. The snow got the sand from the deserts of northern China. Pollen is oftentimes harmless, but sand-caused yellow snow isn't that innocent. It's related to air pollution. When NASA's Aura satellite detected this phenomenon, weather officials warned the public about the potential risks of this golden snow. Sometimes the color of the snow looks closer to brown, not even yellow. Certain trees, like oaks, carry a lot of tannins in the bark. These are organic compounds that protect the tree from harmful bacteria and funguses. These tannins can fall to the ground near the tree. For that to happen, it first needs to rain, and then the rain should turn into snow. The moisture makes the tannins run down. Have you ever just laid on the fresh snow and opened your mouth to let those tiny flakes in? How safe is it to eat those flakes, though? In most cases, it isn't. But here's a pro tip for snow eaters. The safest way to consume snow is by choosing a clean and white layer. Get some from the freshly fallen, fluffiest part. And now, forget about it. You never know what random show in the street may contain. Blue-tinted snow is the next one on the list. A cloudy day will create darker shadows. Snow absorbs all color wavelengths. Well, almost all color wavelengths. It cannot completely absorb blue. The bottom line is that bluish snow forms due to the weather conditions. I mean, the snowflakes are actually translucent since they're made up of ice crystals. These crystals reflect light. That's why in regular cases, snow appears white to our eyes. Gray and black snow also exist. Here, I'm not talking about melted snow mixed with dirt near the roads. The one I'm referring to is created with the dust coming from the volcano. But it can be created with less exotic soot, ash, or motor vehicle exhaust. This type of snow is dirty. It might have a dusty or oily scent. If its color comes from petrochemicals, then it's probably toxic. The next one is watermelon snow. The name comes from the red and green color of the snow. Unlike other color versions, this one has a sweet and fruity scent. Different kinds of algae and bacteria produce watermelon snow. You would be very lucky to see it because it's seen during summer in alpine and coastal polar regions. The greenness comes from chlorophyll, and the redness comes from astaxanthin. This is sort of a pigment. Fun fact, some animals, such as flamingos, crabs, and salmon, also get their color from that pigment. This phenomenon is super important ecologically. When the snow melts, it mixes into the waters and becomes a food source for organisms. Snow can come in different colors, but also different shapes too. An example would be snow rollers. To me, it looks as if someone is dragging an ice cream scoop through the ground. They are rare phenomenon because they need certain conditions to form. There should be wind, but it shouldn't be too strong. Typically, 30 miles per hour should do it. Yet, it depends on the snow too. It should be snowing, and how powerful the snow falls is another issue. Snow rollers occur in open prairies or hills with no obstacles like boulders or trees. It's a combo of two separate layers of snow. The first layer is the pre-existing sheet that crashed on the ground. The second one is a fresh layer of fallen snow. Imagine snow running down from the top of an ice rink, which doesn't hold on to what's under. Then, the wind carries some snow that is sticky enough to hold on to the things on its way. As the roller moves, it continues growing. If it's windy and there's an opportunity for rolling down a hill. Now, I want to move on to other cool facts about snow. For instance, its silence. Do you know how freshly fallen snow absorbs sound? Especially if you live in a busy city, you realize it's the quieter ambience. It literally absorbs sound waves. Think of it as a commercial sound-absorbing product. Things change when it melts and refreezes. Then, the ice reflects sound waves. As a result, sound travels further. Plus, it gets clearer. It's not just us enjoying the snow. Apparently, some monkey species love it as much as we do. Japanese macaques, or snow monkeys, also make snowballs and play with them. Young macaques especially get attracted to snow. They steal one another's snowballs, then fight to get them back. Snow? Blizzard? What else? I can count some words related to snow, but the Inuit, for example, has dozens of words for snow. And Scots has 421 terms related to the snow. For instance, skelf is a large snowflake, and unbrak means the beginning of a thaw. From one point of view, there's the cold and the risk of hypothermia. From the other point of view, animal burrows or human igloos. We associate snow with cold, but it warms you up. Since snow consists of above 90% trapped air, it's a perfect insulator. We talked about snow itself, but what about snowflakes? The shape of a snowflake is bound to the air temperature around it. Researchers examined snowflakes and found out that long, thin needle-like ice crystals form at around 28 degrees Fahrenheit. They also investigated other ice crystal samples taken from different temperatures. The flakes appear to be flat and plate-like in lower temperatures, such as 23 degrees Fahrenheit. The snowflake can also appear with 6 arms, or a dendritic structure as ice crystals, and that again depends on the changes in the temperature surrounding each snowflake. Maybe you heard the saying that no two snowflakes are identical. A catalog of snowflakes supports this theory. One chemistry educator detected more than 30 different types of snowflakes. They are classified as column, plane, rimmed, irregular, and so on. The reason for all this variety is the path each snowflake makes to fall to the Earth. Each one of them faces a tiny bit of different atmospheric conditions on its way to the ground. All of them have 6 sides, that's for sure, but in 1988, a scientist found 2 identical snowflakes. Turns out they can be identical. Snow can be seen in deserts too. I know it sounds super contradictory. We're accustomed to thinking about smoking hot sand, cactuses, and nothingness from a desert at first glance. In Death Valley or the Sahara Desert, snow is occasionally seen. In fact, in January 2022, some parts of the Sahara Desert got covered with a white blanket. It's not unlikely to happen all the time, but it's not impossible at all. You see, on some nights, the temperatures in the desert get low. Snow needs 2 things to form: cold temperatures and moist air. Sahara put a tick on both of these conditions. Bonus fact, how long is the tallest snow figure? In 2008, Bethel town residents in the US united their forces with the people of surrounding towns to break a world record. The snow person was 120 feet tall. It took them more than 1 month to finish creating the figure. The Statue of Liberty was only a few inches taller than this figure. When we see a strong snowstorm, we call it a blizzard. That's not always so. You see, a snowstorm should meet some qualifications to be classified as a blizzard. For instance, the wind should be at least 35 miles per hour. Plus, the snow must decrease the visibility to a certain mile for 3 hours at the least. Otherwise, the snowfall can be named a snow squall or a snow burst.
If you make a snowball and try to set it on fire using your lighter, the thing won't melt. The snow will first turn black, then it'll start to vanish, but you'll get no water. There's nothing supernatural about this phenomenon. The snow is melting, but you don't see it because of the structure of the snowflakes. They kind of wick away the melted water, and it gets absorbed by the remaining relatively loosely packed snowball. As for the black char marks, they're simply traces of soot left by the lighter fluid. A 2017 study suggested people had accidentally created a protective bubble around the planet, all thanks to decades of using very low-frequency radio waves. They've formed an artificial cocoon that shields Earth from radiation and solar flares. Helium can make your voice go squeaky and helps your balloons float in the air. Can the stuff get even better? Yep. Try cooling it to the extreme temperature of negative 460 degrees Fahrenheit. That's just above absolute zero. That's when you'll see this gas turn into a superfluid, which means it can move without friction. In this state, it can do some pretty bizarre things. It can leak through seemingly solid materials. It can stay motionless while the container it's in is being spun. And it can even climb the walls of the said container. Water can freeze and boil at the same time. This is called the triple point. That's when a substance can be solid, liquid, and gaseous at the same time. But there's only one pressure and temperature that can make it possible. Scientists have discovered a new state of matter. It's known as time crystals. Created in a lab, they are a concept that's insanely hard to grasp. These structures repeat regularly in time rather than in space. And in 2020, scientists even claimed they witnessed 2 time crystals interacting. In 1 teaspoon of soil, there are more microorganisms than there are people on Earth. Bacteria, microscopic insects, algae, mites, fungi, beetles, earthworms, you name it. In other words, the soil under your feet is one of the greatest concentrations of biomass ever. Poke a hole in the side of a bottle and let a stream of water flow out of it. Then aim a laser pointer through the bottle. You'll see the beam get caught in the tiny waterfall and curve downward. It happens when the light travels through some dense material, in our case, water. Then, it hits the boundary with something that has a lower density, like air, and it makes the light curve. Our moon used to have an atmosphere. Several volcanic eruptions happened on Earth's natural satellite around 4 billion years ago. They released immense volumes of gas, trillions of tons. It was so much that the gas didn't have enough time to escape into space. That's how an atmosphere was formed. Bird eggs come in all kinds of shapes, and what an egg looks like seems to be down to a bird's ability to fly. The stronger a bird's flight is, the more elliptical and pointy its egg will be. And those species which hardly ever leave the ground lay oval-shaped and rounded eggs. Plus, an egg's length always correlates with a bird's body size. If you drop an egg to the floor in your kitchen, you'll make a big mess. But it's different if you do it in the water, say at a depth of 60 feet below the surface. The pressure there is almost twice greater than at sea level, and it'll hold the egg together like a makeshift shell. The chances are extraterrestrial dust particles are lying on your rooftop. Called micrometeorites, they're less than 400 microns in size. That's about 1/3 of a grain of sand. Scientists think around 100 billion micrometeorites fall to Earth every year. On average, the ocean is as deep as 8 Empire State Buildings stacked one on top of another. This depth is even more impressive in the Challenger Deep, the deepest part of the Mariana Trench and the world ocean. There, you could fit 25 Empire State Buildings. Cold water freezes more slowly than hot. This is known as the Mpemba effect. One of the reasons, but not the only one, is that when the hot water starts to cool, its mass decreases. It happens because some water evaporates. There's less water left to freeze, and the process takes less time. On the other hand, cold water heats up faster than hot. The speed of this process depends on the temperature difference between the liquid and its surroundings. That's why cold water needs less time to absorb heat. But it doesn't mean it'll boil faster than hot water. Zealandia is a drowned continent in the Pacific Ocean. It's often described as a continental fragment or a microcontinent. Its area is almost 2 million square miles, about half as big as the US. It went underwater about 23 million years ago. New Zealand is Zealandia's largest part that remains above sea level. People are still evolving. Scientists have been tracking several millions of human anomalies. It turns out some harmful genes are slowly but surely getting filtered out of human DNA. Mercury is one of the very few metals that remain in their liquid form at standard room temperature and pressure, all because mercury atoms have extremely weak bonds between one another. Researchers claim that great apes, like orangutans or chimpanzees, can't appreciate music, like at all. Studies show they can't tell the difference even between the most opposite genres. Music is just meaningless noise to them. You'd need a drop of liquid, a state-of-the-art laser 3D printer, and a couple of hours of work to make the tiniest fidget spinner ever. Its width will be smaller than that of your hair strand. At least, researchers at Oak Ridge National Laboratory managed to do just that. A camel can drink up to 30 gallons of water in a bit more than 10 minutes. This water is stored in the animal's bloodstream. As for its fatty hump, it provides the camel with nourishment when there's little food around. Some sea animals, like salmon or turtles, use our planet's magnetic field to find their way home. In its gaseous form, oxygen is colorless and doesn't have any odor. But when it's liquid or solid, this substance looks pale blue. After being caught by a black hole, a star gets ripped apart by its enormous gravitational forces. Some parts of the star's remains hurtle into the black hole. The rest, in the form of a huge jet of plasma, is ejected with such force that it travels hundreds of light years away. Your lungs not only help you breathe, but they also produce blood cells. These cells are responsible for the clotting, which stops bleeding. The lungs make more than 10 million of these tiny cells per hour. Not so long ago, scientists decided the dino's family tree had to be redrawn for the first time in 130 years. Apparently, two species of dinosaurs had to be grouped together from the very beginning. Those were the lizard-hipped meat-eaters, like T-Rex, and bird-hipped vegetarians, such as the Stegosaurus. Only two letters never appear on the periodic table. Those are J and Q. Spin a ball when you drop it, and it'll fly through the air while falling. This phenomenon is known as the Magnus effect. You can see it at work in different sports, for example, tennis or baseball. Sound travels almost 4 times faster underwater than it does in the air. That's why divers often have problems with figuring out the direction of sound. Bananas contain potassium, and this element is slightly radioactive. On the bright side, you need to eat 10 million bananas before radiation can negatively affect you. There's a device that can put out a fire with the help of sound waves. It's called a sonic fire extinguisher. There are underwater lakes and rivers in the oceans. They're known as brine pools. The water in them is saltier and denser than the rest in the area. Brine pools have shorelines and sometimes even waves. Stars look as if they're twinkling because of the turbulence in Earth's atmosphere. It makes the light from the stars move in a different direction before reaching your eyes. And this looks as if the light is shaking. It takes water 1,000 years to complete its continuous journey around the world. The whole process is known as the global ocean conveyor belt. Bismuth is a brittle, shiny white metal with a pink tinge. If you melt it and then let it cool really slowly, it'll form iridescent cubic crystals. In the deserts of California, stones move on their own. Some of these sailing rocks are as heavy as 700 pounds. Most of them move in straight lines, while others create oval turns. When the wind catches small droplets of lava from active volcanoes, it carries them miles away from the vent. The droplets get stretched into super thin glass wires called hair lava. Some strands can be as long as 6 feet. The desert rose appears in arid places that occasionally get flooded. The environment keeps switching from dry to wet and back. It allows gypsum crystals to trap sand grains and form flat petals. The holiday spirit comes with holiday decorations. Sparkling lights, garlands, and snow globes are all part of it. Our furry friends like to play with them too. But did you know that this stuff has some hidden dangers? Let's take a closer look at pet safety tips in your household, both during holiday times and any other time of the year. Number 1 is tinsel. It's a go-to option to spread a celebration vibe. Tinsel is also known to spread all over the place. You might have noticed this if you trimmed a tree with it. Pets, especially cats, love such decorations. Yet, if they eat a piece of tinsel, it can cause intestinal problems. Not to mention emotional effects. The consequences can cost a lot money-wise too. Surgery to remove a foreign object can cost hundreds of dollars. Don't underestimate the appeal of a shiny object in the room, and keep your eye on your pets. Number 2 is decorative lights. Once you're done, you put them in the box, and they spend the whole year there, tangled. When you open the box next year, you'll have a hard time untangling them. But while you're unpacking, your pets can eat the lights or get an electric shock. To avoid this, you can bundle up loose cords with protective plastic covers and hang the lights in places your pets can't easily reach. Some people have a snow globe collection. They get these balls as souvenirs from tourist places they go to. Others take them out of a box with holiday decorations at certain times of the year. These fragile things can easily break. Don't ask me how I know this. Some snow globes contain ingredients that are hazardous not only to pets, but also to younger family members. Numerous veterinary sources are full of the same warning. Keep your pets away from snow globes. That being said, the liquid inside snow globes might not be just pure water. It often contains 2% ethylene glycol, and it turns out it has a sweet smell that can lure pets to taste it. Number 4 is about Christmas trees and how they can turn into pet-friendly decor. Vets say that artificial trees and garlands can be safer than real ones. These trees don't carry the outdoor scent with them, so smell-wise, they don't attract your pets that much. Here, the important part is not to buy a flocked or snow-covered artificial tree. These sprinkles, again, can be harmful to pets. If you're not into buying artificial trees, you can attach a fishing line to the tree and hang it on the ceiling to stabilize it. As for the water for the tree, your pet might want to taste it. It's best not to add aspirin or other things to this water. You can cover the reservoir with foil to keep your animals away. Lastly, you can temporarily put a large water bowl in the same room as the tree. If your pet gets thirsty, they can go to their bowl instead of the reservoir. You can consider putting a barrier in front of the tree to make it less accessible. But some cats are wild. They'll just take it as a challenge, and they'll easily get over most obstacles. Yet, most of them don't want to bother with double-sided sticky tape. You can try that. When I talked about snow globes, it included magnets too. I wonder whether magnets can be dangerous for pets. We use them for various purposes in our homes. For starters, with their help, we showcase our photos or notes on the fridge door. Our four-pawed friends can easily get their paws on it. These fridge magnets might not be as harmful as so-called rare earth magnets, though. Neodymium magnets, for example, are the real danger. These kinds of magnets are very powerful. If you accidentally pinch your body parts, they can injure you. Imagine these magnets as warriors. When they get too close to each other, they can strike with a super force to chip and shatter regular magnets. You wouldn't want that type of magnet near your pets or little members of your family. Rare earth magnets are normally used in stuff like hard disks, locks for doors, or headphones, but they're also used as toys. These magnets aren't especially toxic, so if your dog accidentally eats one of them, the magnet may leave its body in a natural way. But what if it eats 2 super powerful magnets? I don't want to get into the details of this scenario. The intestines loop back and forth in the abdomen, and if these magnets get too close to each other, yeah. Apparently, pennies made later than 1982 are also hazardous. They contain high levels of zinc. You might think, isn't zinc an essential mineral for our body? Yes, for growth, wound healing, and many more aspects. Yet, the body needs a small amount of zinc. Too much can cause poisoning. Zinc is found in many metal objects, such as bolts, zippers, and jewelry. If you live in the US, you should know that pennies minted after 1982 have zinc cores covered in copper plating. One of the most common causes of zinc poisoning in pets is these pennies. Household plants and flower bouquets can also be dangerous. Let's say you have a bouquet of tulips that you want to keep, and your cat looks so funny trying to push the vase off the table. You shouldn't let curiosity get the best of your cat. Aloe vera, Daphne, daylily, oh, the list is long. The moral of the story is, kittens are curious and shouldn't eat plants or flowers because they can be toxic for their fluffy bodies. The next one is batteries. The acidic material inside them can leak if they get blasted. Imagine your dog chewing them accidentally. Severe consequences and immediate surgery would be the next step. When I say batteries, I also mean stuff like remotes, watches, and hearing aids. They're also powered by batteries. The next item on the list is food. Yeah, I know how hard it can be sometimes to eat while your pet gives you the look, "I want to taste that too! Give me a bite, human, please!" Okay, allow me to explain the dangers so that you can resist the temptation to share your food with your bestie. Avocado is toxic to birds and rabbits. Apple seeds and almonds are bad for hamsters. One myth is that rabbits eat lettuce, but in reality, you shouldn't include some types of lettuce in their diet. For example, iceberg lettuce. It contains lactocarium. It can be harmful if your animal eats too much of it. Another myth is that cats should drink milk. Nope. Cow's milk is not good for cats because, surprise, most cats are lactose intolerant. Chocolate, garlic, grapes, and raisins can also be dangerous to pets. How toxic something is depends on several factors, like the species of your pet and how much of the potentially harmful thing the animal has eaten. At the end of the day, you know your pet better than anyone. You probably already know how long it takes them to visit their litter box or how it smells. So always be prepared. Watch your pet's behavior. Do they have a decreased appetite? It's best to play it safe. When I say pets, I picture animals like dogs, cats, and hamsters. But some people have exotic pets, such as bears, owls, or crocodiles. The Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries believes that 5,000 tigers are held by people in the United States alone. This number includes zoos, but the majority of them live with private owners. Mountain lions are also commonly seen among exotic pets. Maybe this is why from time to time, we encounter news telling us that something went wrong with private owners of wild animals. Do you have a pet? If you do, what's their name? Why not let us know in the comments? It's a snowy winter night. You're inside your cozy house and watching a historical movie that takes place during the Middle Ages. As you take another sip of your hot chocolate, you can't help but wonder how the people survived the winter back then. At that exact moment, your TV screen suddenly turns into a portal and pulls you inside! Whoa! You open your eyes to find yourself within the world of the movie you were just watching. A man approaches you and says, "Welcome to my medieval village. I am Bartholomew, and I called you here to give you an answer to your question." First of all, let me tell you that conditions became extremely harsh when the cold arrives, and not just for the northern countries. Mainland Europe takes its share of the brutal weather too. So winter is kind of a slowing down time for all of us. You see, we usually associate winter with old age and poverty because of all the changes that occur in nature during this time. For example, we can't really grow any crops when snow covers all our land. And by the early 14th century, things started to get even worse because we started seeing the first signs of what you may know as the Little Ice Age. Cold temperatures peaked. Weather anomalies and extreme events such as sudden floods or hailstorms started to occur, which added to our agony. Take the winter of 1359, for instance. Across central Italy, the snow rose to extraordinary heights. People had to throw the snow into the streets to lighten up their roofs. And because of that, some towns were completely blocked. Their inhabitants were trapped in their homes for several days. Another example of this is the winter of 1389. The snowfall was so great in the Luzerne region of France that many people's farmsteads and houses were destroyed. Bartholomew notices that you start shivering. Ah, you were not prepared for this journey back to medieval winters, I see. Let's walk to my home and find you some warmer clothes. As you can see, I'm already wearing a cloak, a scarf, and mittens, which are all made out of wool. I also have boots that are made out of leather from a deer. Still, all these are not really enough to stay warm when one is outside. That's why we usually layer other clothes underneath them all, to keep the warmth trapped. By the way, the wool can get heavy and itchy sometimes. So beneath our woolen outer clothing, we wear linen undergarments too. The linen acts as a barrier between the wool and the skin, therefore making things a bit more comfortable for us. It is also easier to wash linen clothes, and they dry way faster than woolen ones. The wealthier ones can line their winter clothing with fur, and us regular peasants sometimes use rabbit and lamb for the same purpose. It's not as glamorous, but still effective. We can also hunt some wild animals and birds with the permission of the Lord. Yet again, the sumptuary laws, in other words, consumption laws, are very clear on who can wear what according to their social standing. Take the 1363 English sumptuary law, for example. It states that the wives and daughters of craftspeople and land-owning peasants were only allowed to wear lamb, rabbit, cat, and fox furs. You notice a weird-looking hinged metal sphere in Bartholomew's pocket and ask him what that is. "Ah, it's a hand warmer," he says as he gives it to you. "If we are going to be outdoors for a long time, we bring one of these with us. Otherwise, one's fingers can get numb, you know. Now take a closer look at it, and you'll see that it has tiny holes on its surface. This helps the heat to escape, so that we can warm our hands without burning them once we fill it with hot coal." "That's kinda heavy," you say, and think about how lucky you are to be living in modern times. With just one click from the comfort of your home, you can order Hot Hands instant hand warmers from Amazon, and no coal is necessary. You can even put those inside your shoes to warm your toes, since they're pocket-sized, unlike this metal orb. You and Bartholomew arrive at his house. You realize that he does not take any of his outer garments off. "We keep everything on during the coldest months, because the indoor heating isn't always great," he says. "As you can see, the fireplace stands here at the center of our homes, and right above it, there is a ventilation hole rather than a chimney, which causes us to lose so much of the heat. Yet again, we don't usually sleep in our outside clothes. Instead, we put bricks and stones in the fire, wrap them in fabric, and take them to our beds to warm the sheets. Wearing our nightcaps all night long also helps. And when we're not sleeping, we usually try to stay close to the fireplace as much as possible." You sure appreciate that hot water bottle of yours more now, right? And you didn't even need to cover it with a cloth, like these folks have to do. It already came with a knit cover for your convenience. And the best part is, it's much softer than a brick, and can be heated in the microwave within seconds. "How rude of me! I forgot to offer you something to eat," Bartholomew says. "I know I already told you winter means stillness for us, but we still need to put in some work to not starve. There's a lot of preparation to be done in advance to survive these medieval winters. First of all, we start gathering wood for the fire from as early as spring and through the summer. Then there's the food we harvest in the fall. We have to preserve that in a special way, so all will last over the winter months. The same thing goes for meat, too. The methods we use include pickling, drying, and brining. In terms of grains, cereals, and pulses, we dry them out and store them in ceramic or clay pots. We later use them for making potted stews and soups, in addition to vegetables. Basically, everything we can find goes into the pot. The most common foods we eat in our everyday lives include onions, peas, beans, lentils, and herbs such as parsley. We still have to include protein in our diet, though, and we do that by eating cheese, eggs, fatty bacon, or salted pork. In terms of fresh fruits and berries, they are hard to find during wintertime, so we preserve the ones we already picked by the air drying method too. You think to yourself, if only these people had a food dryer at home, their lives would be so much easier. They could use it for all the foods Bartholomew just mentioned, from fruits to meat. Then again, there's no electricity here. I wouldn't want you to think winters are so grim, long, and boring after everything I've told you. We still do plenty of activities to keep ourselves entertained, Bartholomew says. But what? It's not like they can binge watch their favorite TV shows. We play in the snow a lot, adults and children all together. You can see plenty of peasants ice skating on the frozen lakes. To be able to do that, we used to use pieces of polished wood or horse shin bones. But now, we have iron skates too. I need to mention though, here in Western Europe, ice skating is not as common as in Scandinavia. That is because they are more accustomed to snow and cold temperatures. Sledding is another fun activity we do. Then there are indoor games, such as chess, backgammon, and other dice games. Wool spinning and telling stories are also common ways to spend some nice time with our family. Not surprisingly, nobles have more opportunities in the entertainment area too. For example, boar hunting is very common amongst the elite. At that moment, a portal appears at the door. Bartholomew says, "Guess it's time for you to head back, traveler. Fare thee well."
Now, who would have guessed that the most important accessory in your car might be a nail file? In case you need to get your nails done right away? Nah, to refresh your wipers. Wipers have a rubber that cleans the glass. It wipes water and particles of dirt and insects off the windshield. Over time, this rubber strip gets covered with a layer of dirt, and the wipers stop doing their thing. So all you have to do is take the wipers off and rub them with a nail file. This will remove the layer of dirt, and your wipers will last for a few more months. This is especially important during the cold season, when you need to constantly clean your car of snow. This trick will not only help you see through your windshield better and make driving safer, but it will also save you a lot of money on new wipers. Hey, you parked badly and hit your car on a pole. Well, a small dimple can be fixed with an ice cube. Just lean a piece of dry ice on the impact site and voila! The bumper looks like new. But this method is only suitable for metal parts. It's about thermal expansion. When metal gets hot, it expands, and when it cools, it tries to shrink. So, when you put ice on the dimple, there's tension inside the metal that causes it to return to its previous shape. You can also use a regular suction cup like the ones they use to transport glass. Just stick it to the dent and then pull. A regular plunger that you use to clean a clogged sink will also work for this. Now, let's try to hide the scratches at the impact site. Try picking up a regular nail polish the same color as your car. Usually, scratches on the bodywork are not deep, and they only damage the top layer of clear coat and don't even penetrate to the layer of paint itself. A fresh batch of nail polish will fill the scratch, and your car will look like new. And if you've damaged your car windshield somehow and you see little cracks forming there, use transparent nail polish. Again, the nail polish fills in the micro hollows in the crack and keeps it from getting even bigger. Now, a couple of tricks to keep your car clean at all times. Boy, I could use that. Let's start with the headlights. If you can't get the headlights clean from insects after a long drive, use a regular shaver. It can scrape off unwanted dirt that is stuck to the headlights. You can do the same with the windshield, just don't press too hard or you might scratch the glass. And to keep your headlights clean no matter what, you need to take a regular candle and white spirit and common solvent. Grade the candle and pour it into a glass. Add the solvent to the glass and heat the glass with a hairdryer. Now apply this to your headlights or even your windshield. This will create a protective wax layer that will repel dirt and water droplets. You can also apply wax to your side mirrors and they won't get covered in water when it rains. If your headlights still do get dirty, squeeze some toothpaste on a dry rag and polish your headlights. Toothpaste does a much better job than conventional cleaners. Plus, they don't get cavities. To protect your car's bodywork from dirt and rain, use hair conditioner. Mix 1 portion of the hair conditioner and 2 portions of water. Apply this mixture to the car with a microfiber cloth. It's important to do it to the car when it's as clean as possible. It's perfect timing to do this after you wash it. Then wait 5 minutes and dry the car. This protection will now repel any drops of dirt and rain. Now to the interior. You may have noticed that the windshield and rear window often fog up. This is because the water that is contained in the warm interior air comes into contact with the cold windows of the car. Water condenses, turns into droplets, and stays on the window. Now, take your regular shaving foam and put it on the windshield from the inside. A portion the size of your fist is enough for the entire windshield. Wait a few minutes and wipe the windshield with a dry cloth. The chemicals in the shaving foam will repel water droplets from your windshield so it won't fog up. You can also fight moisture in the interior of the car in the first place. To do this, take an ordinary sock and fill it with kitty litter if your cat doesn't mind. Tie the sock up and just put it in the car. Kitty litter will absorb moisture from the air in the car and your windows will stay dry. And this sock can come in handy in a tough situation. So you're stuck in a field in snowy weather. The The wheels are spinning in the snow and your car is standing still. Well, just sprinkle some kitty litter out of the sock right in front of your car's driving wheels. The traction of the wheels will get better and you'll be able to get out of the snow trap. But what if your battery is low in a deserted place? There's no one to help you start the car. Well, get a jack and lift the drive wheels of your car. Make sure you're doing it safely. Now, get a tow rope. You should always have one in your car. Wrap the rope around the wheel so that when you pull it, the wheel simulates movement forward. Put the car in first gear, turn the ignition key. Now start to quickly unwind the rope so that the wheel starts to turn. Voila! The car is started. It's like starting a car by pushing it. It's important to remember that this trick only works with cars with a manual gearbox. If you don't want to spill oil when you pour it into the engine, just put a screwdriver in the hole and pour oil over it. The more advanced option is to use the oil can as a watering can. The thing is, the threads on it fit perfectly with the threads on the engine hole. So take an empty oil can and cut off the bottom. Now screw the canister into the hole and pour oil without fear of spilling it on the engine. If a door handle or lock gets frozen in the winter, use regular hand sanitizer. It'll melt the ice almost instantly. You can also soak a key in hand sanitizer and put it in the lock. You should be able to open it in a few seconds. If you don't have antiseptic, take out an ordinary straw, lean it against the lock, and blow warm air through it. A few minutes of breathing and the lock can be opened. You're charging your phone in the car, but you're tired of long wires that keep getting tangled. No need to cut them. Take your charging wire and wind it around a pencil. Now blow hot air on it with a hairdryer. Just don't overheat the wire. How about that? It now looks like a flexible spring, and its length is much shorter. If you like lemonade or Coke, but don't have a can opener in your car, not a problem. Just use the tip of your seatbelt. Pop! And you can enjoy your favorite drink. If you live in the sunny states, you've often found that the steering wheel of your car sometimes gets so hot you can almost burn your hands. The easiest solution is to turn the steering wheel in the parking lot so that its bottom is up. Once back in the car, you can hold the steering wheel by the cooler top side. Also, if the car gets too hot in the parking lot, just roll down the driver's window, get out of the car. Now open and close the rear passenger door several times. This will speed up the process of airing the interior, and you won't have to drive in an oven on wheels. When you get out of the car, you may sometimes get an electric shock. This is because of static electricity. You rub your clothes on the seat and then you touch the metal door when you try to close it. At this point, there's an electric shock between your hand and the door. To avoid this, open the door first by touching the body of the car with your hand. You can touch the passenger door from the outside. Then put your foot on the ground and get out of the car. Yay! You avoided an electric shock. If you're a novice driver, you may not have a good feel for the actual size of the car, so you might scratch it by parking it even in your own garage. Just hang a tennis ball from the ceiling so that it touches the windshield or rear window exactly when you need to hit the brakes. Perfect parking and no scratches. If you share the car with someone, you have to constantly move the driver's seat. To simplify this process, you can put little strips of colored tape on the panel under the seat and the driver's door where the seat is in a comfortable position. Now, when adjusting the seat, you just need to put these strips against each other. You can use different colors of tape for each driver. Or the other driver can get their own darn car. An expensive solution indeed. Yes, it is. Harsh winds made this icy land unrecognizable. If you lived in Australia about 100 million years ago, you'd be wearing jackets and sweaters. But around 220 million years ago, this icebox of land was locked up in what used to be Pangaea. This supercontinent had Australia and Antarctica fused, including even South America and Africa. Scientists found out Australia was going solo at the same speed as your fingernails grow when it decided to cut ties with Antarctica. Before that, the Earth was just a giant floating ball of ice, and the sun wasn't as hot and fiery as today. You're walking along an icy path in the early Cretaceous period. You're looking for something to eat, but plant life is scarce. With no sunlight, there isn't any energy source for any edible vegetation, save for moss. So, finding a decent snack would be like bumping into a unicorn. You lurk around and find three-toed footprints leading to what looks like a frozen forest. You follow them, but still can't figure out who these prints belong to. You reach a dead end with the snow up to your knees and realize you're stuck. Suddenly, you hear some growling not far away. You look to your right and see a large theropod walking towards you. It's almost as tall as a giraffe and has razor-sharp teeth on its jaws. Ooh, lucky you. This dino is a carnivore and probably the CEO of the prehistoric meat-eating world. Scientists have discovered at least 15 other dinosaur species, including a 22-foot-long polar carnivore and a smaller predator that could easily run away from its larger mates. You try to swim through the thick snow as the beast with those large teeth is making its way to you. Good thing some trees don't let it move quickly enough. You manage to find a good rhythm, lift each leg above your waist, and make it out in time. As it gets closer to you, you make it through the snow and duck between some bare trees. You were lucky this time, but it'll be back for you. Fossils of plants and leaves show that back in those days, Antarctica wasn't as chilly as it is today, and the same goes for its northern counterpart, Alaska. Still, living between 70 to 100 million years ago wasn't that comfortable. The T-Rex was the undisputed king of the dinosaurs. Scientists found bones and fossils from dry places like Montana and Texas, but they were shocked when they found T-Rex fossils in Alaska. There were also fossils of horned, long-necked, and feathery dinosaurs in the Arctic region. Even though the T-Rex was an apex predator, it wasn't as fast as you would expect, but its size was enough to make you run for your life. One of the T-Rex's favorite meals was a duck-billed dino as big as an elephant called the Edmontosaurus, which dwelled in frosty areas. These creatures were probably slow migrators and wouldn't have been able to find any shelter to live through the harsh conditions. Their jaws show they were plant eaters and had to find some greens to munch on wherever they went. They were constantly on the move since they strolled rather than ran. Scientists claim they would walk at an incredibly slow speed of around 1 mile per hour. Even a tortoise could outrun them. If you were a dinosaur during those days, then you'd face one of the most challenging decisions of your life. Live with mom and dad or get your own place. No, actually, the choice was to stay for the winter or flee. The dinos that remained in the frosty lands made nests and stayed for the whole year. Some scientists debate whether these polar dinosaurs were warm-blooded or cold-blooded. Mammals and birds have internal mechanisms to keep warm, like using their muscles and metabolism. That's why our bodies shiver when we're freezing. Reptiles need to bask under the sun or lie next to any heat-producing surroundings to absorb heat and charge themselves for the rest of the day, just like you charge your phone, but they didn't have phones then. You continue walking around trying to find something to eat. Your stomach is growling and you feel you're getting weaker. The wind picks up and throws some snow at you. Good thing you're wearing a thick coat and some proper leg wear. You're getting tired and need to find a place to rest. But out in the wilderness, staying in one place is like offering yourself as an open buffet to any predator. You sneak out and manage to get into a small cave to escape the upcoming blizzard. You start a small fire to keep warm, but you turn around and notice that the cave inside extends further. You quickly make a torch and walk inside. Scientists said that some dinosaurs might have burrowed to survive the storms. They found some structures in southern Australia that resembled a habitat for burrowing creatures around 100 million years ago. After walking for hours, you finally reach the other end of the cave. But this time the weather is a lot better and the sky is crystal clear. You notice small footprints leading to the river. Strangely, there's no icy crust on the water, so you cup your hands and take a few quick gulps. Suddenly, a large shadow looms over you. You turn around and see a huge feathery dinosaur with bulging eyes. It kinda looks and moves like a velociraptor, and it's looking straight at you as if you were its snack. You get up slowly. You know you can't outrun it, so you have no choice but to fight it off. But then another figure appears nearby. A small herbivore called the Leolinacera, walking on two legs with a long tail, pops up and takes a sip from the river. The carnivore's attention has shifted towards it, and it forgets about you. Out of nowhere, a giant theropod rushes in from behind the frozen forest and chases them. You run back to where the cave was, trying not to get spotted. Humans weren't in the script then. 7 million years ago, Homo sapiens split from apes, becoming a fully independent species around 200 to 300,000 years ago. Neanderthals also thrived. While Homo sapiens were living and thriving in Africa, Neanderthals were migrating to parts of Europe and Asia, and were the first humans to live through an ice age. Scientists claim that Neanderthals couldn't compete with Homo sapiens and slowly disappeared. Some of them integrated with Homo sapiens. Earth has been through 5 ice ages. They're powerful enough to change Earth's physical structure permanently, and are partly responsible for landscape design. We're actually in the middle of an ice age right now that's been going on for 2.6 million years. But we happen to be living in the warmer interval parts that can last for tens of thousands of years. Neanderthals were shorter and stockier than Homo sapiens. They had wider noses and big skulls. According to scientists, they lived in caves and fashioned up clothes and tools made of stones and bones. They also had flat teeth on their jaws for gnawing and chewing, just like Homo sapiens. Ice ages played an essential role for Homo sapiens to adapt and survive. In their caves, they were able to draw scenes of hunting and gathering, and were the first ones to harness the power of fire for warmth, protection, light, and cooking. They also used an advanced system of sewing clothes, using bone needles and animal skins to make thick coats to warm themselves up. Ah, those were the days, huh?
When it's too cold outside, airplanes often get delayed, or in extreme cases, even cancelled altogether. First of all, if it snows heavily, such conditions drastically decrease visibility, making it unsafe to taxi and take off. During a blizzard, flight control may command the aircraft to stay on the ground and wait until the snowstorm subsides. Ice on the runway is another reason. An airplane's landing gear are nothing like a car's wheels, and they can't be equipped with studs to avoid skidding. But even if they were, a plane needs to develop speeds on the ground that are much higher than on an average road to take off successfully. If the runway is slippery with ice, the airplane can slide off it easily. Things like this actually happened in the past. For example, in January 2014, the JFK airport in New York was shut down after a plane skidded off the runway and into the snow. Luckily, no one was injured, but the airport staff had to dig the aircraft out of the snow, and even the local police joined the efforts. Same story with landing, which is even trickier in freezing conditions because a plane is in much less of a controlled environment and traveling at even greater speeds. What's more, while an airplane that's about to take off and skidding will probably get into an open area and stop there, one that's about to land could end up crashing into the airport's infrastructure. Needless to say, that's way more dangerous for everyone. Freezing weather conditions can also cause frost and ice sheets to build up on the plane itself. Airplanes are carefully engineered, and any tampering with their structure may cause huge trouble. As experienced pilots say, even a thin crust of ice over the wings of a plane can mess with their delicate design and destroy lift. Planes can be de-iced though. The airport staff usually spray them with a special solution that doesn't let the ice build up on the aircraft's skin. But back to the runway. If it's covered with ice, there's little you can do. Unless the sun is shining, the chances of safely removing the ice from the pavement are almost zero. There's also a chance of damaging the pavement, making potholes, which can result in safety concerns for both takeoff and landing. Imagine driving over a pothole in a car at full speed. Pretty unpleasant. And now multiply it by about 1,000, because a plane is much heavier than a car, and don't forget that the landing gear is not exactly there for driving. Jet fuel and the equipment that pumps it can freeze too if the temperature is too low. The fuel freezes at -40 degrees Fahrenheit, but that can only happen on the ground before takeoff. At a cruising altitude, temperatures may drop as low as -70 degrees Fahrenheit, But since the liquid is inside the plane and burning down steadily, it's much warmer there. On the ground though, nothing stops the fuel from turning into ice. If that happens, no flights are available, obviously. Same goes for the pumping equipment. Even if the fuel is still liquid, the pump may cover with ice and just stop delivering the fuel into the plane's tanks. In the worst case scenario, it might even break down, leading to expensive repairs and prolonged delays in flights. Finally, ground crews have to do a lot of work before takeoff or landing, and they're all human after all, so they can't bear the freezing cold for too long. This issue is often resolved by tag teaming. One group of workers goes out in the field to do the job, while the other is waiting for them in a shelter. After 20 minutes or so, the first group returns to warm up, and the second one takes up the job where the first one left it. Although it's efficient, it still slows down the operations a lot, so that might also cause delays. But despite all the trouble freezing weather can cause, it's actually more beneficial for a plane than extreme heat. Cold air is denser than hot, so planes gain more lift and stay truer while in the air. They're more easily controlled in flight too. Air molecules are slower and closer together, creating a steady flow of air around the wings and cockpit. At high altitudes, the air naturally becomes thinner as the air molecules spread out and become more scarce. That's exactly why planes can't get to the upper layers of the atmosphere. There's just not enough air there to create sufficient lift. The same happens when it's too hot down on the ground though. Air molecules get faster and spread out, meaning the plane's wings don't have as much air to push off and get into the flight mode. To take off in extreme heat, a plane has to move much faster to generate enough air resistance and lift. But to move faster, the plane needs its engines to work better, and that's also impossible when it's too hot. As the air gets thinner, the amount of oxygen decreases too. And jet engines use oxygen in the atmosphere for combustion. When they lack this crucial element, they can't convert enough energy into thrust, meaning slower acceleration and worse energy output overall. So the problem is that the plane has to have a longer runway distance to build up enough speed and lift to take off, but it can't because its engines are not working to the best of their ability. This usually doesn't cause trouble, but only up to a point. When the temperatures on the ground level reaches about 120 degrees Fahrenheit, some flights can get cancelled because it's simply dangerous for them to try and take off. Other planes are more heat resistant and powerful, but that also depends on the heat. Some aircraft even have to reduce their weight by removing part of their fuel, cargo, or even passengers when it's too hot. Lighter load means better acceleration before takeoff, and it doesn't help to avoid cancellations, but it also means planes aren't working to their full capacity. The average cruising altitude for an airplane is about 35,000 feet. They don't technically need to be so high up, but that altitude gives the best speed and efficiency. Air gets thinner at higher altitudes, which means less wind resistance, but less lift. For most commercial aircraft, the area between 30,000 and 40,000 feet is the sweet spot where the two factors balance out. You probably still aren't using a laptop from 1999, and your computer isn't flying at close to the speed of sound. Fortunately, planes have a much longer lifespan than computers. There are airliners from the early 1970s that are still just fine. They might not be able to keep up in terms of speed and fuel efficiency, but older planes are no less safe than their modern counterparts. Contrails, those white trails airplanes leave behind them at high altitudes, are easily mistaken for engine exhaust, but most are nothing more than water vapor. During a flight, moisture in the air collects in the engines before being vented with the exhaust. The hot, wet air leaving the engines mixes with the cool, dry air found at high altitudes, resulting in long, thin lines of vapor. Humidity determines when contrails form and how long they remain visible. Ever notice the numbers on the end of a runway? They're actually used to show the pilot which direction the plane is facing. For example, the number 36 is short for a heading of 360 degrees or due north. Along with numbers, the letters R and L indicate if the nearest runway is to the right or left. The lights on the tips of a plane's wings are called position lights or navigation lights. and they're used during times of reduced visibility. They help planes to see each other in the dark and can also tell pilots what direction an aircraft is traveling. The red light marks the tip of the left wing, while the green light is on the right. The third light is white and found on or near the tail. It might seem odd that the flight crew cares whether your window shades are up or down. The main reason is so that the passenger's eyes can adjust to the outside light. Mostly, it's just a matter of getting people on and off quickly. But in an emergency, the last thing they want is people stopping to blink before they evacuate the plane. Christmas time is here. You finally found a nice tree, brought it into your home, and now you're ready to decorate. But first off, you should unclog your toilet because something smells really bad in your place. Oh, wait, could that be your new tree? Possibly. And there can be a couple of reasons for that. First, when you bring the tree home, it's cut down but still alive. That means it will try to seal the cut in its trunk with resin to heal itself. So if you just put it in the water, the tree won't absorb any. You'll end up with stagnant water in the bucket, and it won't take too long before it starts to stink. So, when you first bring your new Christmas tree in, take a sharp knife and refresh the cut so the tree can start drinking the water. Or, you might have brought it too early. A Christmas tree enters the final stage of its life when you bring it indoors. When a tree has withered, it stops absorbing water. So, to keep it fresh for a longer time, it would be better to store it somewhere in a cold place, like a garage, or maybe even your garden for a while before you bring it inside. This way, your tree will get about 2 extra weeks before it starts to dry out. You can do your best, but there's always an option that you have picked the tree that wasn't fresh from the beginning. Not every vendor sells Christmas trees that are recently cut. Sometimes, they leave them in a warehouse for a few weeks before taking them out on sale. Here's a tip to notice the difference. When choosing your tree, run your hand through a branch. If you see needles come off, keep looking for a fresher one. But if you did buy a tree that's not that fresh, you can still perk it up. Put some fresh water in the stand and add an aspirin in there. Or you can try to mix some sugar, aspirin, and a little bit of lemon juice to get a couple of extra days of a good-looking tree that smells well. Sometimes, trees smell bad not naturally. It's done on purpose. Lincoln, Nebraska had a problem with people who kept stealing Christmas trees. To stop them, they had to add a liquid called fox urine. You can get that in a store that sells trapping supplies. They sprayed this liquid on their trees and left signs that claimed that the smell was really bad, especially if you brought the trees indoors. And to make the stench even stronger, they added a pinch of skunk smell. That combination was awful enough to keep the thieves away. On the campus of the University of Minnesota, people would either take whole Christmas trees or they would cut off the tops of those big evergreen ones. To stop this, the team in charge of taking care of the land of the university started spraying the trees with a strong, bad-smelling liquid that skunks use as a defense mechanism. And it worked. Ever since 2012, no trees have disappeared from the campus. In Port Republic in New Jersey, people also had to use a stinky mixture to protect their Christmas trees from being stolen. This time, if you brought the tree inside a warm house, you'd sense something similar to the smell of rotten eggs. One homeowner from Lancaster County, Nebraska, didn't feel like applying the smell. So he just left a few warning signs that his tree was sprayed with something disgusting. It worked for a couple of years, until he decided not to put up the sign since the tree had grown too tall. So he thought it was safe. But that was the year when thieves took it. Minnesota also had a problem with people stealing Christmas trees. Their Department of Natural Resources watched a property in a forested area for 2 nights because they had wanted to catch a young couple who kept stealing spruce trees from the land that was in the ownership of the state. That couple was kinda like a modern version of Bonnie and Clyde. They had illegally cut down almost 2,000 trees. They wanted to sell them, but eventually they ended up arrested. Of course, Christmas is not only about smelly or non-smelly trees. Different countries have their own ways of celebrating this holiday. For example, in Austria, there's a character called Krampus, who scares kids who haven't been good and leaves them sticks. In Catalonia, a region in northeastern Spain, they have a nativity scene with their own funny figurines. They also have a pretty unique tradition called Dia de Nadal. It's a log with a red hat and a face drawn on it. They treat it as a Christmas character. They feed the log bits of food and then hit it with a stick while singing a special song. The log is then supposed to poop out presents, which are often pieces of nougat candy. In Sweden, Christmas is not Christmas without Donald Duck. About 40% of Swedish people gather around their TVs on Christmas Eve to watch this popular cartoon. Ever since 1959, their main TV channel has been showing a special program called Donald Duck and His Friends Wish You a Merry Christmas. Back in the day, Sweden had only 2 TV channels, so this was the only time they could actually watch American and Disney cartoons. The tradition became so popular among people that many, during this program, used their phones less. There were even fewer emergency calls at that time. It's a tradition they really value, not something you can perhaps record and watch later. People are so into the show that they watch it in silence unless there's a funny scene, when they laugh, or when they want to share their favorite lines. Here's something that will warm your heart. J.R.R. Tolkien, the author of The Lord of the Rings, wrote letters to his kids every year where he presented as Father Christmas. These letters started off as simple Happy Christmas cards, but as time went by, they turned into more complex stories. After a while, he even started talking about goblins, a polar bear sidekick, the man on the moon, snow elves, and many other magical things. He even developed a special Arctic language. People in Iceland have a beautiful cozy tradition, which in translation from their language means Christmas book flood. It started back in the 1940s when paper was in short supply, so many would exchange books as presents. This tradition has remained, which is why Icelanders, even today, love giving and receiving books for this time of year. Sometime around mid-November, every household gets a book catalog they can use to order gifts for their family and friends just in time. The main day for exchanging presents is Christmas Eve. They open gifts and later enjoy hot chocolate and reading their new books. Not all countries have a custom of opening Christmas gifts together on the same day. Some are shocked to hear that in certain countries, families open their presents on December 24th. Hollywood movies often show families who put out Christmas and milk for Santa, who comes to visit on Christmas Eve. And the following day, they wake up and start ripping the paper off their presents. Sometimes in the movies, you can see people who exchange a single gift on Christmas Eve. The presents are usually festive pajamas, which they wear and sleep in on December 24th. This way, they kinda prepare for all the joys, excitement, and opening presents the next day. Japan has its own unique tradition. Instead of preparing a homemade meal for Christmas Day, they eat fried chicken from KFC. It's so popular that people have to make their KFC orders weeks in advance to make sure they'll get their food. The Kentucky for Christmas slogan started as a part of a marketing campaign back in 1974, and now, decades later, about 3.6 million Japanese people enjoy their fried chicken for Christmas. People in Norway pay only half their tax in November, so everyone has more money for Christmas. That way, a month before Christmas is the time when Norwegian employees really make the most of their working hours. They might even put in a bit of overtime. It was January 7th in 1610 when Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei made an astonishing discovery using his homemade telescope. 4 moons orbiting the planet Jupiter. By the way, these days you can make your own version of his telescope using cardboard tubes, lenses, and some superglue. The main point of this DIY telescope is to place two lenses at the correct distance from each other. You'll need two lenses. One lens should be concave, the other one convex. So one lens is curved out and the other one is curved in. Galileo's initial telescope was able to magnify objects approximately 8 times. He continued to improve it until it reached about 20 times the magnifying power. But let's get back to the main story, shall we? When he first looked at those 4 moons of Jupiter, he believed he was simply looking at a bunch of stars. But he soon noticed that these space objects seemed to be moving in a regular pattern. It took him a couple of weeks to figure out that what he was looking at were not stars, but moons circling Jupiter. Galileo initially named those moons 1, 2, 3, and 4. But let's face it, those weren't the most creative names. As more moons in our galaxy were discovered later, the numerical system for naming them became confusing and impractical, so it lasted for just a few centuries. So, these days, those 4 satellites, Jupiter's largest, are named Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Kalisto. They're collectively known as the Galilean moons to honor the man who first noticed them. Galileo's discovery was crucial for our later understanding of astronomy. It was initially believed that other objects revolved around the Earth since it was seen as the center of the universe. We now know that there are hundreds of moons in our solar system. However, large moons, like those discovered by Galileo Galilei, are not so commonly stumbled upon. A moon is considered large when it's the size of our planet or bigger. Ganymede, for instance, is bigger than Mercury. We basically call Ganymede a moon just because it orbits Jupiter. Otherwise, it has all the other characteristics of a planet. It's no surprise that Jupiter has the biggest moons in the area. It beats all the other planets in our solar system in both size and mass. So no wonder it pulled in a lot of other objects towards it. Jupiter is believed to have in total almost 80 moons, with only 53 of them being given official names until today. The first of those Jupiterian moons to be discovered by Galileo was Io. What sets it apart is the fact that it has a lot of volcanoes. Io is the only space object to have active volcanoes in our solar system, apart from Earth. It's also nicknamed the Moon of Fire and Ice because of its sulfur dioxide snowfields. Io's outer layer is splotchy, featuring multiple colors like orange, black, yellow, white, and red. That's probably the reason why NASA described it as a giant pizza covered with melted cheese and splotches of tomato and ripe olives. Because of that sulfur though, Io doesn't smell that appetizing, something similar to a rotten egg. There are more than 100 mountains on the surface of this moon. They are a lot larger than those we see on Earth, some being bigger than Mount Everest. On average, these mountains are 4 miles tall and 98 miles long. Because of those active volcanoes and the intense radiation on Io, there's little chance that life as we know it could exist here. But hey, who's to say it can't have life the way we don't know it? Next on the list of Galilean moons is Europa, the smallest of the 4. It's comparable in size to the Moon. Europa has an entirely icy surface, with just a bunch of craters scattered here and there. Because of that outer layer, Europa is very reflective, making it one of the brightest moons out there. As for its age, scientists believe its surface to be somewhere between 20 to 180 million years old. Europa is about 4.5 billion years old. What lies beneath that icy surface is impressive. It may even hold the secret to life outside Earth. Ice forms here in 2 ways. The first is through congelation. A rather self-explanatory process. Ice just grows as the surrounding environment gets colder and colder. The other method, though, is a lot more fascinating. A layer of supercooled water found under the ice shell reacts when agitated. It then generates these crystals that make it look like it's snowing in reverse, floating upwards to the ice sheet they sit under. You can recreate this environment yourself at home. Take a bottle of purified water and place it into the freezer. If you don't have purified water anywhere near, just boil some water a couple of times to get rid of as many impurities as possible. Since there won't be any particles inside, once in the freezer, it won't turn solid. But if you take the bottle out of the freezer and give it a shake, the impact will make the water rapidly crystallize, transforming it into a slush-like consistency. There may be water on Europa, but there's little evidence so far that life exists on this moon. However, it's one of the highest candidates in the solar system for potential habitability. Some sort of life forms could adapt to live there in its under-ice ocean. That environment is most likely similar to what we can find in our planet's hydrothermal vents hidden deep within our oceans. The amount of oxygen in Europa's atmosphere is very little, but in 2013, NASA gave away some cool evidence. This yet again supports the theory that there's potential for life on this moon. It seems that Europa might be venting water into space. If this is confirmed by future observations, it could also mean that Europa is geologically active. It could also come in handy if we'd managed to study water sources one day. The largest of those Galilean moons is Ganymede. It's also the biggest moon in our solar system altogether. It's a low-density space object similar to Mercury in size, but having only half of its mass. However, Ganymede is the only moon out there to feature its own magnetic field. It's quite small though, and we can barely notice it from Earth since it's overshadowed by Jupiter's much more powerful magnetic field. Another cool aspect of Ganymede is that its atmosphere contains oxygen. Don't get too excited, it's not nearly enough to support any life forms living there. Back in December 2021, a 50-second audio clip was released, which was previously recorded by NASA's probe on its Ganymede flyby. For the inexperienced, the sounds were more similar to those of an old dial-up internet connection, but because of its quirky tunes, Ganymede was soon nicknamed Jupiter's singing moon. Finishing up the list of Galilean moons is Kalisto, or the most heavily cratered object in our solar system. What's interesting about this moon is that its landscape has barely changed since it formed, and scientists are still debating why this is happening. Most other space objects go through loads of changes throughout their lifetimes because of events such as collisions with other objects, changes in orientation or speed, or chemical reactions happening on their surface. Callisto is also about the size of the planet Mercury, but it has a lower density. Jupiter's magnetic field has a lesser impact here, since Callisto is the furthest from the giant planet. Its surface is estimated to be a staggering 4 billion years old. As opposed to Io, Callisto is not geologically active, but scientists believe there might be an ocean hiding underneath the moon's surface, which may potentially harbor life. The fact that it's less impacted by Jupiter's magnetic field means that it features low levels of radiation. Given this suitable environment, we may one day end up setting a human base for future explorations here.
In 1996, one of the most vigorous snowstorms in history hit the east coast of the US. It was named Blizzard of 1996. From January 6 till January 8, a huge amount of snow fell in the country. The storm was so strong that people couldn't see anything around except a white veil. Huge snowdrifts formed. People couldn't leave their homes because snow had covered all the doors and windows. Someone spent hours shoveling snow to get into the car. And while they were doing this, new snowdrifts appeared around. This is considered one of the main winter storms of the 20th century. Schools and universities didn't work. Shops, libraries, and cafes were closed. You could look out of the window and see nothing but a white ice wall. The wind lifted snow into the air and blocked the movement of cars. People abandoned their cars to hide in the nearest shelter, which created many miles of traffic jams. During the snowfall, hurricanes formed and destroyed buildings. Chaos reigned everywhere. People were afraid to leave their homes. Strong wind and rain forced rivers to come out of their mouths, which caused massive flooding in nearby cities. Many states lost millions of dollars because of the destruction. However, at that moment, the residents of one small town didn't notice the problem. The blizzard of 1996 covered almost all of Pennsylvania, but the weather was not so bad in Delaware County, aka Delco. Neighboring cities were attacked by the storm, but not this one. Since about that time, a legend has appeared among the locals. They say their small town is protected by a mysterious weather bubble. In 2013, they called it the Delco Bubble. According to the locals, the bubble covers the entire Delaware County and protects it from all natural disasters and other hazards. Residents of a quiet, sunny town like to talk about this phenomenon, but there's no scientific evidence of its existence. It seems bad weather bypasses the district during huge storms. As soon as the hurricanes approach this place, they break up in different directions and then converge right after passing this area. All this happened according to the locals' words, without meteorological evidence. They remember several different storms in the 90s, including the blizzard of 1996. They announced that the storms would reach Delaware on TV and radio, but in fact, no forecast came true, and the residents enjoyed pleasant weather. One resident says that he often looks at forecasts and satellite photos and sees how black clouds disperse in Delco. It's peaceful and comfortable here. It seems as if time has stopped here too. However, the bubble doesn't protect against all problems. There were some floods there, after all. So, many residents don't believe in anomalous protection. There's one scientific explanation proving that storms are weakening in this place. Sea breezes go inland and settle in places like Delaware County sometimes. The streets and surroundings are filled with cold air. This creates air stabilization. Then when a storm forms and goes here from the west, it meets this stabilized air mass. Hurricanes lose a significant part of their strength, so it seems as if bad weather simply bypasses the district. Also, the Delco bubble can be explained with the help of psychology. Almost all rumors about the protective anomaly come from people. Residents write on social networks and tell each other about how the hurricane didn't touch their homes. In such cases, people often think that if trouble didn't happen to them, then it didn't happen at all. Imagine you go out on the porch of the house while the radio predicts a strong storm. Everything is calm before your eyes. A light breeze blows in your face. But behind, a few hundred feet away from your backyard, a real hurricane is raging. You didn't see it and went to write a post on the internet that the Delco bubble saved your city again. Storms are a dangerous weather phenomenon, and you should be wary of them, especially if you don't live inside a protective bubble. But let's say you missed all the news and reports about an approaching thunderstorm. It's okay. You'll know it's approaching you thanks to the clouds. One of these clouds is called cumulonimbus. These are precursors of thunderstorms, hurricanes, hail, floods, and even tornadoes. You will easily recognize them by their formidable appearance. They are thick, heavy, dark, and can sparkle because of the lightning created inside. The first reaction to such clouds is to escape or seek shelter. But wait a minute. Let's see how they form. The warm air lifts the smallest drops of water. They are so tiny that they form steam. Most often, this steam rises from the ocean. Since there are several times fewer of them on land, they rise high into the sky in an area with a very low temperature. There, the warm steam cools down and the droplets turn into tiny particles of ice. Then, these frozen pieces are mixed with other particles that the planet is filled with: dust, ice, and sea salt. All these things stick together into a homogeneous mass and create a cloud. Millions of other extra particles stick to it, and the cloud becomes more voluminous. The mass increases and drops begin to fall to the ground in the form of rain. Clouds are necessary for the planet. They protect us from the strong radiation of the sun's rays. You could say they filter the sun for us. When night falls, the clouds act as a blanket. They keep warm and don't allow the cold to penetrate inside. Almost all clouds are formless. The human imagination comes up with what they look like. But there are rare clouds that have a clear, striking shape. Lenticular clouds. They are stationary and have the shape of a huge round plate. These clouds often cover mountain peaks. Mammatus cloud. They often form under cumulus rain clouds. They look like hundreds of huge bags filled with water hanging over the ground. If the sky looks like gasoline is spreading all over it, you see nacreous clouds, common for areas with rather low temperatures. You can see it in places closer to the Arctic Circle. They get this color thanks to the sun. It shines on the clouds at a certain angle and creates this pattern. Morning glory clouds are like huge ropes stretching along the ground. You can observe this phenomenon in northern Australia. So let's go down from the clouds to the ground and look at the mysterious phenomenon hiding among the swamps. For centuries, people have been observing this strange thing. Some called it fool's fire. At night, somewhere far from civilization, you can see mysterious bright lights among forests and swamps. They glow with orange and blue colors. It seems like somebody has lit a torch and now is waving it to attract your attention. Perhaps someone needs your help, and they are signaling about it. In the past, people thought so too. They walked towards the lights and found themselves in the swamps. Now, they needed help, but there was no one around, and the mysterious lights just disappeared. Walking through swamps is very dangerous, so don't let these lights catch you in this trap. You should know that there's a scientific explanation for this phenomenon. Bioluminescent fungi and algae grow in swampy places and sometimes glow with a blue color. From afar, this creates the illusion of a small light. Wind and water sway algae with mushrooms, so it seems as if lights are flying. Also, there's a lot of organic material in the swamps: leaves, grass, mud, clay, tree branches. This stuff decomposes rapidly in wet conditions and releases methane. As soon as the methane comes into contact with the air, it ignites and flies over the swamp in the form of a burning ball. This phenomenon is observed all over the world in swampy areas, but the most famous flying lights are in the West Texas desert. They are called Marfa lights. Each of them is the size of a basketball and always appears in the desert. The lights flicker, merge, divide into two parts, fly away into the sky. However, there's no scientific explanation for this phenomenon. Maybe these are just lights from passing by cars. However, many people think that Marfa lights appear for the same reason as spook lights over swamps. There are large reserves of oil and natural gas with methane hidden under the desert. Sometimes, this gas comes out of the ground and gets fired after contact with oxygen.
Urbania. Sounds like a made-up city from a fairy tale, but it's not. It's real and located in central Italy. The town's name isn't the only strange thing about it. Every year, the local newspaper and television publish a strange weather forecast. It's based on onion wedges. Yes, you've heard it correctly. Italians from this region eagerly look forward to a forecast based on a vegetable. The tradition dates back to the Middle Ages. It's kept alive by the local school teacher. Every January 24th, she cuts a yellow onion into quarters. Then, she divides them into wedges, 12 of them for each month of the year. They lie neatly on her kitchen cutting board, facing east. The following morning, the onion is ready for interpretation. Because she sprinkled them with salt, the wedges change their texture. The woman uses these clues to forecast the weather for that year. She's been doing this for 3 decades. And before her, her father did it. Before him, her grandfather. You get the gist. Onion reading has become a family tradition. Historical records show that this practice has been going on in Urbania for centuries. Back in the day, farmers used this method of forecasting the weather to help agriculture. It was important to know exactly when to plant seeds and when to harvest crops. The method must have been accurate because up until the beginning of the 20th century, locals still trusted onions more than the official weather forecast. This isn't surprising. The first weather forecast based on scientific data was published in a British newspaper in 1861. Before this time, people did all sorts of things to predict the weather. The methods they used might seem pretty funny to us today. Take the woolly bear caterpillar as an example. This species lives in the United States and southern Canada. The legend goes that you can determine how harsh the next winter will be just by looking at the animal's color pattern. If the color brown is dominant, then the winter will be mild. That's an odd way to predict the weather, but believe it or not, it does have some grounding in science. You know who entomologists are? Yes, those are scientists who study bugs. Their research showed that the caterpillar's color is connected with how much food it has had. But there's a twist. The color reveals the harshness of the winter of the previous year, telling the future is not the woolly bear caterpillar's forte. People think ladybugs bring luck, but they're more than good luck charms. Have you ever heard of the saying, "When ladybugs swarm, expect a day that's warm"? This is actually true. When the weather is warm outside, these lovable insects leave their hiding. But as the temperature drops before a rain shower, they fly in search of cover. Frogs can also predict rain. Right before the first droplet, these amphibians croak louder. They actually do this because they're about to mate. Frogs lay eggs in bodies of fresh water. If rain is coming, then water levels in ponds will rise. This increases the animal's chances of finding a partner to produce tadpoles. Have your parents told you to stay away from hornets' nests? They were right, but the nests of bees, wasps, and hornets make for excellent weather stations. When they start building nests higher than usual, expect a colder winter with a lot of snow. You see, hornets cannot survive temperatures lower than 50 degrees Fahrenheit. That's why they want to stay clear of the cold as much as possible. Another animal that bulks up for winter is the squirrel. Take notice of these cute rodents the next time you go hiking in the late fall. If they seem chubbier than usual, then the winter is gonna be cold. And remember Scrat from Ice Age? The hyperactive squirrel that was constantly chasing after an acorn? When you see a squirrel acting like Scrat, then that's a sure sign of a long winter approaching. The rodents want to stock up before Mother Nature closes the shop. Have you noticed more cobwebs in your house recently? That's just spiders sensing bad weather approaching. Also, if spiderwebs are larger than usual, then they're trying to catch more prey. That's their way of preparing for a long winter. Livestock prepares for this period by growing thicker fur. If you live in the countryside and notice that sheep are woollier than usual, then it's time to invest in a warm winter jacket. Are there mole hillocks in your backyard? Apart from tripping on them, you can use them as tiny weather stations. The deeper they are, the harsher the winter. Let all those animals rest a bit. Looking at the sky can also tell you the weather. Duh! There's a popular theory that every foggy day in August equals a day of snowfall in winter. Pretty exact math for something that's just a belief. Then there's the moon. Science already knows that it has power over ocean tides. After all, the saying, "Clear moon, frost soon," has been around for a while. When the moon is shining bright in a cloudless sky, it's gonna be chilly the next morning. Looking at clouds also gives hints about the weather. White clouds high in the sky indicate a clear and sunny day. When their color changes to black and they're set lower in the sky, expect rain. The cloud's shape is also revealing. If they're ragged when you look at them from below, open your umbrella. It's gonna rain soon. Remember the onions from the beginning? They're not the only plants that can forecast the weather. In the Ozark Mountains, there is a folklore belief that involves persimmons. When you cut in half the seed of this sweet fruit, look for the shape inside. When it resembles a spoon, expect snow that winter. But if you see a fork, then the cold season will be mild. A knife shape and the weather will be windy and icy. This strange prediction based on cutlery has some logic behind it. American persimmons ripen in September and October. It shouldn't be surprising that people use this fruit to inquire about the winter ahead. The United States is the world's second largest producer of apples. That makes it easy to test another theory. If apple trees produce more fruit than usual, then the upcoming winter will be harsh. There are two explanations why this might be true. The first is that apple trees produce more food for the animals. The second is that they want to maximize the number of seeds, just in case the plants don't get through the cold spell. Walnut trees use a similar tactic. People figured out that walnuts have a thicker outside shell in preparation for a winter colder than usual. The same goes for hickory trees and oaks. Pine cones are more than a table decoration. The phrase, "open pine, the weather's fine," says it all. Pine cones open their scales during warm and dry weather. They want to spread their seeds as far as possible. But when the weather takes a turn for the worst, they close them. Cold or damp air won't disperse pine cone seeds very far. Today, no one goes into the forest to see how plump squirrels are, nor do they take out a ruler to measure pine cones. All the info about the weather we need is inside our smartphones and on the internet. In the 1950s, computers took over weather forecasting, and they've been doing it ever since. But inaccurate weather predictions still happen. Long-term weather forecasts are especially challenging. That's because there are so many factors at play. Wind, humidity, temperature, air pressure, and clouds are just the tip of the meteorological iceberg. Although it's just a tradition, Italian onion reading might not be so ridiculous after all. At least the nice lady uses the onions to make soup after everything is said and done.
Hey, welcome to Earth 2050. You're living in a world after the great temperature shift of 2020. Days are as hot as they can be, and nights are just as cold. Humans have always depended on the environment, but now they're more vulnerable than ever. Fuel, money, precious metals all lost their value in a world where ice costs more than gold during the day, and you can exchange a brand new designer watch for an electric blanket at night. You don't remember the world that used to be because you were born in the new climatic era. You were lucky to find a good job right after college. The company you work for sells bottled water. When it's 100 degrees plus outside during the day, bottled water is on top of world sales. The antiperspirant business is booming too. People can easily go through 2 sticks a week. You wake up at 6:30 when it's still cold. The sun comes up in half an hour, and the shift will follow shortly after. There's a half-hour window between 7 and 7:30 when temperatures are pretty moderate, like spring in the old times. Most of the day, from 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m., is like living in an oven. 7:30 to 8 p.m., it's probably like what they used to call autumn. From then on, it's 40 below. Today's a big day. Could mean your first promotion. You take a deep breath, slide your feet into your slippers, and head to the shower. On autopilot of the day-to-day routine, you first turn the sink faucet all the way off. It's an old world habit your parents recommended to keep the pipes from freezing. Even though all of yours are up to code, wrapped in heating tape and insulated, you'd rather not risk it. You get dressed, the daily shorts, sandals, and tank top. They have high-tech thermo clothes that adjust for the day and night temperatures. But you don't have the money for those. Maybe if you get that promotion, you can invest in a good, efficient wardrobe. Funny thing is, you can always tell a person's status by looking at them. Some things never change. The thermos walk confidently with their stylish tech wear. You and the rest of the baggers pack extra clothes for work and cold evenings. Got your umbrella? Doesn't help with the heat, but at least the sun doesn't beat directly down on you. Shades, deodorant, SPF, day supplies are good. Now for evening. Gloves? Check. Winter ding! You get a text message. It's your boss. You're coming in a little earlier today to set up for the presentation, right? You text her back and head to the kitchen for breakfast. Coffee's a luxury. Same goes for fruits and veggies, unless you grow them at home, but your personal greenhouse is pretty modest. Tomatoes, corn, some melons, and lettuce. The greenhouse is still cold and heat-resistant like the standard model, but you definitely need to upgrade to a bigger one. No time, too much work. You grab an apple, a bottle of water, your bag, and rush out the door. You usually leave at 7:15. It's a 15-minute walk to the office, just enough to beat the heat. But you're out shortly after sunrise today. There are thousands of people on the street. Everyone tries to stay indoors unless it's during those 30-minute pockets of moderate weather. Even with the crowd traffic, you still get to the office just in time to set up for the big presentation. You majored in water manufacturing and distribution. When you told your boss about this idea of yours, she immediately invited the bigwigs to hear you out. It could cut the price of bottled water in half and put the company in the history books. You hurry to the locker room to change into your suit. The presentation goes great, despite your nervousness. Your boss tells you big things are coming your way, but take a vacation because you'll need plenty of rest before work begins on turning your idea into a reality. You go online to see your options. People don't vacation to the beach anymore because the climate is pretty much the same everywhere. That, and you can't fly anywhere. Air travel is a thing of the past, since planes can't take off in 100-degree weather. High heat means air is thinner, so the wings can't produce lift. At least, that's what your granddad told you. He was a pilot in the times before the shift. Skiing, ice skating, and snowboarding are now done only at indoor artificial snow resorts. Now that sounds refreshing. You finish work at 4 p.m. You think about going straight home, but you're in such a good mood, you decide to go for a stroll in the park. Gotta change back into your shorts and tank first. You walk along the empty streets. Hardly anyone just hoofs around in the heat of the day. Whew! You immediately understand why. You look at the city. Short groundscapers line the streets. Skyscrapers are no more. The huge temperature fluctuation between day and night made them unstable and wore them down. Plus, skyscrapers trap heat and make the city hotter, something nobody needs in this new age. You look at the rooftops, covered in solar panels. Everything runs on sun power. Cars, public transport, central heating and cooling. The sun may feel like your worst enemy during the day, but at least it helps keep you warm inside at night. The park looks nice from afar. Trees, bushes, green grass, and flowers. But everybody knows they aren't real. Unless plants are in a greenhouse, they're artificial. The daytime heat would scorch and dry them up. The blistering cold would freeze them overnight. You sit down on a bench and hear two old men talking about how different the world is today. The landscape changed so much. Ponds and lakes evaporated entirely within a few months. They reminisce about fishing trips, farms, and fields. Yeah, only desert animals made it through the shift. You can see coyotes, roadrunners, lizards, and scorpions if you head far enough out of the city. Camels have replaced cows and horses on every continent. 30 years of the new climatic era aren't enough for evolution to make any big changes, but people have already started to look different too. Skin is getting thicker and rougher to deal with the temperature fluctuations. Eyebrows are bushier to keep the sweat on your forehead from rolling down into the eyes. One of the old men looks at his watch. 7:30. We gotta skedaddle, Jim. It's 7:30 already? You've already wandered far from your house. You open your bag and dig for your pants, gloves, boots, and where's your winter coat? You keep digging. Panic rises in your chest. You start throwing things out of your bag, desperately hoping it's buried at the bottom. No such luck. You get a chill down your spine. Fear? Yes. But also because it's already cooling down. You throw all your stuff back in the bag and start sprinting down the street. 7:40. You're not gonna make it. At least the running is keeping you pretty warm. 7:50. There are no buses, no cars, no nothing. Everybody's already inside. 7:55. You know what's coming if you don't get home by 8. When it's minus 40 degrees and you're in your daytime clothes, it takes just 5 minutes for hypothermia to set in. You've heard the horror stories. People venturing out into the cold without the right gear on. First, the shivering, rapid heartbeat. Your body fights to keep you warm. Then the shivering stops. Heart rate goes down. You start to feel lightheaded. Your body gives up. When they pass out, that's it. 7:58. You see your street up ahead. Come on, legs, go faster. 8 p.m. The cold knocks the wind out of you. You're a minute from your house. Just keep going. The air stings your lungs. Your eyelashes get covered in ice. Your nose is bright red. Is this it? This is how you go? 8:01. You burst through your front door and fall to the floor. Made it. You open your eyes, and the first thing you see is your winter coat hanging on the back of your desk chair. You can't help but burst out in laughter at your carelessness. This day that started out so perfectly, yet turned so quickly, like day and night. I really do need that vacation.
We're in Siberia. It's so cold here that freezing gusts of wind are burning your face. All that white snow seems to be blinding you. This place resembles Antarctica because of the permafrost. Recently, a group of scientists researched one of the local rivers. With the help of a drilling rig, they extracted several samples of frozen soil. The scientists were shocked to find living creatures inside the ice. Later in the laboratory, they realized that the creatures were microscopic multi-celled organisms known as bdelloid rotifers. These creatures looked like little worms. Scientists knew that these worms could live in frozen conditions for up to 10 years. But the age of the rotifers found in the ice was about 24,000 years. And after defrosting, they began to reproduce, as if they had been sleeping for several hours, not thousands of years. Further analysis showed that these organisms could stay frozen for hundreds of thousands of years. The rotifers might have lived during the time when people didn't invent the wheel yet. And this isn't their only superpower. Bdelloid rotifers are among the most radioactively resistant animals on Earth. They can survive in places where there's no oxygen and water. They can also stay alive in areas with high acidity and can live without food and water for a long time. By the way, these are not the only creatures that are known for living for thousands of years. Particular types of moss and some microorganisms are also almost immortal. Nematodes, also called roundworms, are some of the most adaptive varieties of worms in the world. Imagine the Eiffel Tower standing tall and proud. And now, let's make it 10 times higher and place it underground. Exactly at this depth, many thousands of feet under the surface, scientists discovered these creatures. There's no sunlight and almost no air in this place. And since it's much closer to Earth's core than the surface of our planet, the temperature here is higher than in the middle of the hottest desert. Millions of tons of soil above create insane pressure. But all this couldn't prevent life from developing here. When roundworms run out of air, food, or when the temperature becomes too high, they get into a unique state of stasis, or deep hibernation. In this mode, the worm's metabolism slows down, and almost all the processes in their bodies stop. The creatures can sleep for a very long time, and only wake up when the environment becomes more livable. By the way, you don't have to go so deep underground to find these creatures. Nematodes are found all over the world. They can live in hot springs, deserts, high in the mountains, among the harsh ices of Antarctica, or inside animals and humans. Our next invulnerable creatures are tardigrades, also known as water bears. These are microscopic 8-legged invertebrates closely related to arthropods. It's impossible to see them with the unaided eye. But a conventional microscope will allow you to see tardigrades in detail. They look like minuscule bears. They're called water bears because they need a thin layer of water around their bodies at all times. It's necessary to prevent dehydration. Tardigrades have been found in all kinds of environments, from ocean depths to sand dunes. They're incredibly robust thanks to their unique organism structure. Yeah, they look soft, but their body is covered with a tough cuticle. This coating resembles the exoskeletons of grasshoppers, mantises, and many other insects. Water bears shed their old layer of the cuticle when they need to grow. Each of their 8 legs has 4 to 6 claws, which helps them cling to any surface. The bears can survive at a temperature that's almost 3 times as cold as the temperature in the ice of Antarctica. Heat doesn't harm them either. They have been proved to survive at the temperature that makes water boil. Also, water bears are not afraid of radiation and high pressure. In the depths of the ocean, pressure can destroy alloys of the strongest metals, but these creatures can withstand pressures 6 times greater. But the coolest thing is that they can live in the vacuum of space. Our planet has a magnetic field. This is a shield that protects us from solar radiation. Tardigrades don't need this protection. They can go into near-Earth orbit and come back unharmed, all thanks to a protein protecting their DNA from ionizing radiation. Like other immortal organisms, water bears can fall into a state of cryptobiosis. Tardigrades pull their head and legs inside their bodies and fall asleep. If the surrounding conditions suggest freezing, drying out, or experiencing a lack of oxygen, they will remain in this barrel form until the situation improves. So those are microscopic organisms and microbes that can only be seen through a microscope. But how about something bigger? Meet ironclad beetles. They live in the southwestern US and Mexico. These insects cannot survive high temperatures, live without oxygen, or in conditions of increased radiation. But their shells are so tough that they can only be pierced with a drill or hammer. Their durable exoskeletons are made of a special substance, chitin. It can also be found in the armor of crabs or shrimp. And still, the chitin of the ironclad beetle is so durable that it allows this creature to withstand the impact of a car moving at high speed. In times of danger, they can hide their whiskers and strong legs in special recesses in their shell. Other animals can't bite through the armor, so they spit the beetle out and leave to look for lunch somewhere else. As soon as the danger disappears, the bug stretches out its legs again and goes about its business. Also, the armor saves the beetles from dehydration, which is very useful in hot areas of Mexico and the southwestern US. Inside the exoskeleton, they can store moisture. In other words, these bugs can absorb water whenever they find it and transport this liquid inside themselves. The next creatures are incredibly fragile, but they know how to survive in places where almost no other animals can live. We're going to the southeast of Romania, near the Black Sea. Here, on a desolate wide plain, you can notice a pit. This is a mine leading deep underground. The air on the surface of our planet usually contains around 20% oxygen, but in the mine, it's only 10%. Inside the cave, the air also has an increased content of hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide. People can't breathe there without an oxygen tank. We can probably say that the water and air there are poisoned. Almost no animals would be able to survive here. Still, 48 species of living organisms have been found in this cave. 33 of them are newly discovered species. And they aren't the only microbes or bacteria that can't be seen without a microscope. Something bigger lives here. Strange white snails crawl over the walls of the mines. Transparent shrimp and a bunch of unknown kind of leeches swim in the water. White centipedes with huge whiskers and creepy white spiders run on the ground. And they all have been growing here for almost 5 million years. You might notice a water scorpion and another unidentified species of this animal. It doesn't look like its relatives living in hot sands or tropical forests. No living creature here looks ordinary at all. All animals are either white or transparent. They have no eyes, but are equipped with long paws and antennae whiskers that help them navigate in this dark space. The deeper you go into the cave, the less oxygen the air contains. But the number of living organisms is increasing. The air is filled with methane and carbon dioxide. All the inhabitants of this cave have never seen the light of the sun and have never gone out of the darkness. It seems impossible to survive in such conditions where plants don't produce oxygen. The answer to the question of their survival is hidden in a small lake. The surface of the water is covered with strange foam. If you look closely, you can see that this white substance is alive. It resembles soft, wet paper that is easy to tear. The thing is billions of living organisms, bacteria called autotrophs. There's much more carbon dioxide in the cave than there is outside, and these bacteria, like plants, absorb it. But they don't do this with the help of photosynthesis, which means they don't need sunlight. They use water for chemosynthesis. What these bacteria secrete is food for other bacteria, and these other bacteria are food for bigger creatures. A unique food cycle that you can't find anywhere else on the planet only exists here.
In case you ever find yourself in the wild in freezing temperatures without shelter, trash inside your pocket might save your life. That gum you've been carrying around for months has a foil wrapper, which is going to be your first tool to start a fire. The second tool you need is a battery. It must be in that flashlight you happen to have or some other gadget. You're going to need to cut a narrow bridge out of the wrapper. If it's any thinner, it might break without serving its purpose. One wrapper should be enough to make 3 igniters. Put on your gloves. This contraption is going to get really hot really soon. If you drop it, you'll lose your only source of fire. Attach the gum wrapper to the battery on both ends. Hold it next to some good flammable tinder. If you also have chapstick in your pocket, add some to the fire to make it burn longer. If you get stuck in the snow in your vehicle, kitty litter can come to the rescue. You'll need to shovel as much snow and ice as possible from where your tires pass, and then put a good amount of cat litter around and under the tire. After you rock your car back and forth and carefully go from drive to reverse, you should get unstuck without a problem. In case you don't have a car or a tent at your disposal, you can arrange yourself a nice and warm sleeping area right in the snow. If you're stranded somewhere in the mountains, don't crash in a clearing. Avalanches are more likely to pass here. Find some accumulated debris and broken tree stumps at the base of the clearing and set camp there. To remove snow faster and easier, cut it with a knife or a sharp branch. You're going to be working with the crusty ice layer and going in blocks and not handfuls to save time and energy. Try clearing a section roughly as large as a king-size mattress. You won't be able to survive on ice-cold ground, so once you reach the soil, you'll need to thaw it. Pick enough wood to start a huge fire. You'll need it to burn for hours to keep you warm. If there are pine trees around you, you'll easily find fat wood. It's dried wood that's full of pine sap. You can start a fire on the tree stump using the method you already know. The resin will burn for days. It can also double as a signal fire for those looking for you. Don't feel like digging a shelter in the snow? Bulrush can help you out. It's hollow and it floats and can easily be shaped into whatever you need it to be. Snow bends it down and you can build your human nest inside it without any tools. Once you form the tunnel, bring some dry grass to insulate it. Get plenty of it to build strong and thick walls. Add more grass to the roof, and don't forget to make a grass door and leave an opening to ventilate your shelter. Poke small holes in the ceiling and in the door. When you're about to leave the house for the wilderness in the winter, don't wear cotton clothes or socks. Cotton holds moisture like a champ and loses all of its insulating properties. So, if you sweat or get soaked from the snow, cotton will make you feel even colder. Put on several layers of synthetic clothes instead, with a waterproof outer layer. Long underwear can also count as a layer. Choose woolen socks because they will suspend the moisture in the weave. If you don't have any, you can put on regular socks and plastic bags on top of them.
No matter how tempting it looks, don't eat ice or snow. It can give you dehydration, as your body will need more energy to heat up and melt snow than receive from consuming it. Put some snow or ice in a bottle and between your sweater and the upper layer of clothes. Your body heat will slowly but surely turn it into a liquid. To speed things up, put snow in a bucket or pot and thaw it above your fire. You can make some pine needle tea if you collect enough of those and drop them in freshly boiled water. This drink will be packed with vitamins and antioxidants, just what your immune system needs to survive. You can make a rope for binding parts of your shelter or securing food when cooking out of pine roots. Use a stick to dig them out of the frozen ground and separate them. Split the root in two and pull the ends away from each other. This rope won't burn in your hot fire, unlike synthetic ones. To warm up the cold winter bed in your home, fill a bottle with hot water and place it in your core region under the cover. That's right, not in the toes area. The water will heat your vital fluids traveling through your body, reaching all the extremities and warming you up in no time. Avoid metal bottles so you don't burn yourself. And don't forget to crank down the lid so you don't wake up wet. You can also wrap your pajamas around the bottle before putting them on for an extra effect. That bubble wrap you were keeping in your house for months for anti-stress purposes can serve as an excellent insulation material. Spray some water onto your window and push the flat side of the wrap against it. It will now stay up and keep the heat from escaping your room and your electricity bill from growing out of proportion. If you don't have any bubble wrap at home, try asking at the furniture store if they can give you some for free. To warm up quickly when you wake up, set a timer on your coffee maker for 15 minutes before you wake up. You can also try preparing hot chocolate, oatmeal, or soup the same way. Just put the ingredients in the filter instead of coffee. If you have a thermostat in your building that's locked and won't let you crank up the heat, you can try tricking it. This appliance knows if it's cold or warm enough based on the temperature around it. So, put some ice near it, and it will feel like it's colder in your room than it actually is. Just don't put ice cubes directly on the thermostat. In case you plan your outfits for the next day, you can put those clothes in your dresser and add an electric blanket on top. Turn it on the second you wake up. Your outfit will be warm when you put it on as if it just came out of the dryer. Your toilet seat will also feel warm and nice if you put socks on it. When the news tells you there's a huge storm coming and power outages are highly likely, fill your bathtub with water. If you have an electric water pump, it won't work, and you'll run out of water soon. Since gas stations also run on electricity, fill your car tank before the storm hits to have some emergency gas. Once the storm hits and you're locked in, put on several layers of warm clothes. Thermal wear, a warm shirt, a sweater, insulated pants, and woolen socks. Don't forget mittens so the heat doesn't escape through your hands. Hang dark blankets on your windows to draw in heat. Make sure your doors and windows are closed well and put some towels under them to prevent drafts. Your basement is probably more insulated by the ground, so it could be a good place to spend the night. When the power comes back on, check all your appliances and electronics before turning on the main power switch. They must be unplugged to avoid power surge damage. As you turn the water supply back on, keep the taps on the lowest level of your house closed to let the air out from the upper taps. You've definitely seen all of these places on the screen during at least one holiday season, but would you recognize them in real life? Let's start with some easy ones for a warm-up. The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree has enough lights for a small country, and it has starred in more than one movie. So in this one, there's an adventurous young man separated from his family. I guess you got me at separated. It's Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. This movie is packed with real-life locks in the Big Apple, Queensboro Bridge, Plaza Hotel, Radio City Music Hall, the Empire Diner, the Woolman Rink, and the Bethesda Fountain in Central Park are all real. Don't look for Duncan's toy chest in the city, though. The facade used in the movie is actually the Rookery Building in Chicago. Kevin's uncle's house has a New York address in the movie, but in reality is a building in Universal Studios in Los Angeles. Alright, let's move on to our second location. Here's a hint for you. This building is an upscale department store in London. I hope you guessed it's Selfridges. And this is where one of the most famous scenes from Love Actually takes place, where Mr. Bean carefully wraps Alan Rickman's purchase at the jewelry counter. They say the founder of Selfridges coined the phrase, "the customer is always right," so I guess he wouldn't have liked Mr. Bean's work. While we're in this part of the world, how about a brief visit to Durham Cathedral? Does it look familiar to you? Anyone who has used the holiday season as an excuse to watch Harry Potter again will recognize this building. In the first movie, it played the part of Hogwarts on multiple occasions. Here, Harry releases his owl Hedwig, and Hagrid talks to the famous trio. In the second part, it's the place where Professor McGonagall teaches students to change animals into water goblets. How about this location? I know it's impossible to trick you. It's Harry Potter again. Alnwick Castle in Northumberland in northern England is the place where Harry and others learn to fly broomsticks for the first time. You can visit this place as it often has events and has some cool exhibits related to the saga. This house looks too good to be real, but it is. Do you remember seeing it in any holiday classic? It's Ralphie's house from A Christmas Story. You can visit it any time of the year in Cleveland, Ohio, and even stay overnight. There's also a museum across the street with costumes and memorabilia from the movie and rare behind-the-scenes photos. Moving on, does this location ring a bell? If you've seen it once, you'll never forget it. It's a Wonderful Life is one of the holiday classics. It was set in a fictional town in upstate New York and filmed in a movie studio in sunny Los Angeles. But a town called Seneca Falls claims to be the real-life prototype of Bedford Falls. It has a similar location, houses, downtown, and of course, the iconic bridge where it all begins. The director had a family in the area, so they say he stopped here for a haircut while working on the movie. If you're craving some holiday magic, you can visit It's a Wonderful Life Museum in the former movie theater. Let's make things a little bit harder, shall we? Do you recognize this beautiful house? Well, it doesn't scream winter because it's a luxurious mansion in Southern California that became famous after The Holiday. The villa where Cameron Diaz's character lives was designed by a famous architect, Wallace Neff, as his own house in the late 1920s. It was built in the Mediterranean style and has a lot of beautiful details. But you don't see them in the movie because the interiors were on a separate soundstage. Several years ago, the mansion was on the market for around $12 million. This village looks like it comes straight from a fairy tale, but it's real, and you will easily remember it if you've seen this holiday classic. Did you get my hint? The Holiday Classic. Yep, it's the village where the second main character of the beautiful love story lives. You won't find Iris's house here because even the exterior was built for the movie. But the village itself is probably the most photographed place in Surrey, England, and it's called Sheer. It has some small shops, a tea house, a museum, an art gallery, 2 pubs, an old church, and the cutest old footbridge across the stream running through the center of the village. They had to cover the whole place in artificial snow to make it look like an idyllic December. Okay, I know you know what this building is, but what famous scene from which holiday movie was filmed inside its elevator? Yep, I think I gave it away when I said elevator. It's Elf, of course. The ever-awesome story of a human who was raised amongst elves at the North Pole, but eventually found his way to New York. I have to disappoint you though. There aren't really that many buttons inside the cabin, and they don't look like a Christmas tree. This landscape looks nothing like December, but the movie in question features some awkward family lunches and ugly sweaters, so trust me, it belongs here. Are you ready for the big reveal? It's Bridget Jones's diary. Stoke Park is where the bad guy, Daniel Cleaver, took Bridget for a weekend. The estate has more than 900 years of history, and it also starred in 2 James Bond movies. Wow, I wish I could teleport to this location right now. But whom would I meet there? Well, this is Bohemian Switzerland in Czechia, and you'd meet Lucy, Edmund, Susan, and Peter there. All the famous characters of the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. They filmed the summer scenes in New Zealand, and this place played the role of the Winter Wonderland. Shopping for gifts can be a tiring experience, especially when you do it at the huge Mall of America. Can you remember the characters in which movie chose this place for their last-minute holiday shopping? Jingle All the Way shows us the commercial side of the holiday season. Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sinbad are 2 fathers who have one mission: to get a Turbo Man action figure for their offspring. The largest mall in the Western Hemisphere seems like the best place for that purchase. And while we're on the topic of malls, can something be more about holiday shopping than the giant Macy's flagship in New York? The characters of this movie know it well. I'm sure you had no problem guessing it was a good old classic Miracle on 34th Street. You can still ride the original wooden escalators and meet Santa on the 8th floor. They say Macy's didn't want anything to do with the remake of the movie, so the C.F. Kohl's department store from the newer version is the facade of the State of Illinois building in Chicago. Now let's see how well you know the more recent Christmas movies. This beautiful garden appears in one heartbreaking festive season story. Can you name it? The Phoenix Garden is a community garden in Covent Garden, London, and this is where Kate from Last Christmas realizes the scary truth about the guy she's in love with. Wow, that is one festive place. Do you remember it from any movie? It's the Princess Switch, where the Duchess of Montenaro switches places with an ordinary woman from Chicago. Montenaro is not a real place, but its royal palace is. It's Hopeton House near Edinburgh, and it's been home to the Hope family since the late 17th century. It should reopen for visitors in the spring of 2024 after a reconstruction, in case you want to stop by. How many locations did you get right? Let me know in the comments below.
Christmas, the season of lights, also has a dark side. Legend has it that Christmas Eve is a time for spirits to stroll the earth. Today, we'll look at scary monsters, mysterious entities, and more. The Yule lads, hailing from Iceland, make for quite a Christmas tradition. In contrast to the charming 7 dwarfs of Snow White, these 13 gnome-like trolls bring a touch of quirkiness to the holiday season. The Yule lads first made their literary debut in a 17th century poem. These playful youngsters, each with their own unique names and abilities, sprinkle a touch of mischief in the 13 days leading up to the grand Christmas celebration. Their cozy home is nestled in a mountain cave, where they reside with their interesting parents. The clan's father is a leisure master and prefers to hang out in the cave. Their mother is a giantess with an unusual craving for adventure. She seeks out mischievous children to join her in preparing a stew. Out of the troll kids, Spoonlicker, for instance, is known for his habit of thoroughly cleaning utensils with his tongue. Meanwhile, Door Slammer engages in door-slamming antics that might remind you of an angry teenager. As for Sausage Swiper, well, the clue is in the name. And let's not forget about the family's feline friend, who is also known as Yule. This furry companion is a giant black cat. It's on the lookout for folks. If it spots children without brand new clothes, the encounter won't end so well for the kids. Wow, that's harsh. The Nisi is a kind of creature that would send shivers down your spine. It's a diminutive bearded figure donning a sinister red cone-shaped hat. These malevolent beings enjoy lingering around farms. Their presence is unsettling as they claim to offer assistance with daily chores. But beware, for their demands are far from ordinary. In exchange for their eerie aid, they want a dread-inducing offering. Should you dare to deny this sinister request, they will unleash a reign of pure evil upon your existence. There's a nightmarish saga known as When the Nisi Got No Butter on His Christmas Porridge. Yeah, that's a real title. This tale revolves around a young girl who dares to tamper with Nisi's feast. She places the butter beneath the porridge, invoking his wrath. The horrifying consequences? He takes care of the farm's prized cow using his powers. Takes care, In Scandinavian folklore, many people know this creature as Tomten, too. Mary Lloyd is here to make you run for your life. It's New Year's Eve, and you're a young whelp. Suddenly, you hear some mysterious knocking at your door. As you swing it open, you're met with a spine-tingling sight. It's a tall, creepy figure wearing a long, flowing cloak with a horse's skull on its head. It's accompanied by a group of people who are chanting something in an eerie way. To make it even more unsettling, the horse skull has fake eyeballs in its eye holes, and its mouth is slightly open. This whole scene scares you so much that you can't even move. Not the vision of sugar plums you'd rather have. And then we have the Karakonkolos, hailing from the lands of Turkey and Bulgaria. Now picture a more sinister version of the elusive Bigfoot. The Karakonkolos lurks on street corners, posing riddles to passers-by. Answer correctly, and you may escape unharmed. But should you fail, you risk being plunged into a frigid slumber, even colder than the wintry night. In other corners of the world, the Karakonkolos revel in trickery, often masquerading as a familiar voice, tricking unsuspecting victims into venturing out into the snow. This eerie boogeyman is said to have originated from the Greek Kalakanzaros, its sinister influence echoing across the land. So, the Kalakanzari in Greece are a breed of goblins. For most of the year, they dwell underground, secretly plotting to bring about the apocalypse. However, when Advent arrives, they emerge into the human domain with sinister intent, sowing mischief and malevolence. These creatures are often described as dark, furry entities adorned with tusks and horns. They're male and curiously well endowed in their grotesque forms. Meet Frau Perkta, a character who comes from Germany and Austria. Now, she may go by different names, like Italian La Befana or Russian Babushka, but her modus operandi remains consistent. During the 12 delightful days of Christmas, she shifts between being a sweet, beautiful alpine goddess and a mischievous, some say mischievous, wrinkled hag, depending on your contact with her. She's quite the mood ring. If you've pleased her, you might just see a youthful presence. But if you get on her bad side, she's been known to perform a bit of DIY surgery. Frau Perkta is a remnant from Alpine paganism in the early Middle Ages. It's strongly associated with Berchtentag, also known as the Fest of the Epiphany, which happens on the 12th night after Christmas, on January 6th. As for her name, Perkta means bright one, a fitting moniker. Her look is complete with a knife concealed under her skirt. Careful sitting down. The next one is Krampus. His name is rooted in the German term Krampen, which means claw. It's a creature hailing from the eastern alpine corners of Europe. Legend has it that Krampus takes it upon himself to playfully remind naughty children of the importance of good behavior on the evening of December 5. His methods are imaginative and way above having a chat with little humans. Meanwhile, his kind-hearted partner in holiday cheer, St. Nicholas, rewards well-behaved youngsters the next day during the joyful Feast of St. Nicholas. These traditions trace their roots as far back as the 6th century. Today, many European towns enthusiastically host Krampenslauf, or Krampus runs. People dress up as him at festivals. And for those with a penchant for sending unique holiday greetings, there's the holiday cards option. In an Alsatian legend, there's a story of Hans Trapp. No, not the Von Trapp family. Hans is a local figure known for his extreme greed and lack of moral principles. He resorted to practicing witchcraft and making pacts with evil forces in pursuit of wealth. He faced a dramatic downfall. He lost both his wealth and his place in society. To evade detection, he adopted the guise of a scarecrow and wandered the countryside. At a certain point, he became fixated on the idea of experiencing the taste of human flesh. Oh boy. God recognized that matters had spiraled out of control and struck Hans Trapp with a bolt of lightning. He met his end, yet there are accounts of his spectral return on Christmas. Belsnickel is a character of German folklore. It's traditionally known for its unique role in guiding children toward better behavior, offering an intriguing contrast to the jolly figure of St. Nicholas. The term Belsnickel can be traced back to the fusion of bells, an older German term signifying fur, and nickel as a nod to St. Nicholas. Belsnickel is known for his visits to children, during which he engages them in friendly conversations and playful inquiries. Based on their responses, he may opt to reward them with a gift or employ a form of discipline, often involving a wooden rod. Belsnickel's origins can be traced back to the Middle Ages. The final touch is Grilla. She is a giantess who is able to sense children misbehaving all year round. She keeps a record of those children and sees them as snacks during Christmas time. Wait a minute, didn't we mention her before? If you ask this question, you're an attentive, devoted Brightsider. We have indeed mentioned her, the mother of the Yule lads. Remember that crowded family with the black cat? Now, Pierre Fouettard was a butcher. He was known for his involvement in the cases of abduction and robbery, leading to tragic fates for children. St. Nicholas uncovered his gruesome acts and miraculously revived the children. In retribution, Pierre Fouettard was sentenced to a lifetime of servitude, accompanying St. Nicholas and managing wayward youngsters. Well, thanks anyways, but I think I'll just stick with Santa Claus. Oh, and the reindeer.
It's Christmas Eve in 1945. George Sauter and his wife Jenny are at their cozy home in Fayetteville, West Virginia, celebrating the holiday with 9 of their 10 kids. Their oldest daughter makes the night even more special, bringing extra gifts for her younger sisters. Good night, kids. The couple heads to bed around 10, but they decide to let the kids stay up late to enjoy their new toys. Little do they know that right then, at that very moment, it's the last time their whole family is together. At midnight, the phone rings. Jenny wakes up and rushes downstairs to answer it. It's an unfamiliar female voice on the other end, and creepy laughter emerges in the background. Jenny says that the person has the wrong number and quickly hangs up. On her way back to bed, she closes the curtains, locks the door, and turns out the lights. She glances at her oldest daughter, who is peacefully sleeping on the living room couch. So Jenny thinks to herself that the kids must be upstairs in bed. Well, she probably should have double-checked that. It's 1:30 in the morning and Jenny wakes up once more. This time, a thick smoke is creeping into her room. Jenny and her husband rush out of the room only to find flames everywhere. Despite being completely shocked by the tragic scene, the couple and 4 of their kids manage to escape, but the other 5 kids are still inside the house. I mean, they must be, right? The thing is, investigators did a brief search of the grounds on Christmas Day, but they didn't find any trace of the kids. And that's strange. You see, the family's home was reduced to ashes in 45 minutes, and a body usually takes 2 to 3 hours to fully disappear in a fire. Could someone have taken the kids? Well, that's one theory. On the night of the fire, one witness indeed reported seeing a black sedan full of people speeding away from the family's house. And the chilling part is that some people reported seeing the kids in a car, at a restaurant, and even in a hotel on the following days. But none of these reports were confirmed. And not even a billboard with the missing kids' photo could give them any clues as to their true whereabouts. A disappearance case as mysterious as this one occurred in 1996 in Wilson County, Texas. Patty Vaughn was described as the kindest person in the world and an amazing mom to her 3 kids. On Christmas morning, she called her sister, all teary, saying that she had had a big fight with her husband. But that was not surprising because they were going through a tough divorce after 13 years of marriage. Later that day, Patty met with her husband at their house so he could celebrate the holiday for a couple of hours with their kids. But Patty had a different plan for the evening. She wanted to drop their kids at her cousin's house and enjoy the last hours of the holiday with her new boyfriend. Unfortunately, she never got to meet him that night. The day after the traditional gift exchange, Patty's boss found her blue Dodge Caravan on the side of a road leading to her home and workplace. But she wasn't inside, and she was never seen again. Have you ever heard of Britain's Roswell? Yep, that went down during the holidays, actually on the day after Christmas in 1980. On that day, 2 officers reported seeing a strange light in Rendlesham Forest, located in Suffolk, England. According to the witnesses, this strange flying object was fast. I'm talking about traveling 60 miles in just 2 seconds. A commercial plane, for example, would fly around 0.28 miles in that same time. So the officers thought that whatever was there, it was clearly under the control of the intelligence. Well, this story is quite well known, but there's another UFO mystery in England that's even more eerie. And it also happened during Christmas. Imagine being woken up at 1:25 on Christmas Day by a loud noise coming from the roof. That can't be Santa Claus, of course, but you start to question yourself. What started as the noise of branches hitting the roof becomes louder and louder until it sounds like giant hailstones, making you crazy. You stick your head out of the window and see nothing. Absolutely nothing. The sound then turns into a hum, then into a faint whisper. What looks like a horror movie plot happened to Mildred Head in 1964 in Warminster, a small town in Wiltshire, England. But she was not the only one. Later that morning, another woman was walking down the street when she was suddenly thrown to the ground by the force of savage sound waves. Around the same time, a couple was surprised by a similar noise. They described that frightening sound as if 5,000 tiles from their roof were ripped off and then put back on again. In total, more than 30 people reported hearing mysterious noises that Christmas morning. That was just the start of what we now call the Warminster Thing, a decades-long enigma of UFO sightings, scary sounds, and cars mysteriously breaking down after these strange occurrences. Over 50 years have passed, yet no theory can fully explain what happened in the UFO capital of the UK. Santa Claus coming down the chimney, 8 tiny reindeer, stockings filled with gifts. This perfect holiday recipe is described in the "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" poem. But there's a mystery hidden in that iconic poem. You see, the verses were first published in a newspaper called the Troy Sentinel on the 23rd of December, 1823. But there was a problem. The poem didn't have an author. This mystery persisted for 21 long years until a language professor from New York City named Clement Clark Moore claimed authorship. Mystery solved? Well, not exactly. A letter from 1879 raises an intriguing possibility. The author of the poem might not be who we think. In this letter, the daughter of a New York poet and farmer named Henry Livingston Jr. says that "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" is actually her father's work. She was too young to have heard the poem when it was originally recited, but the family says that her father read the poem to his kids 16 years before it was first published in the newspaper. But don't get too excited, because this whole story will probably remain a Christmas mystery. The truth is that the alleged author passed away just 5 years after the poem's publication, never once claiming to be the real author. The holiday season is usually a peaceful time of the year, but 1997 was an exception to this rule. It's December 22nd, and Beth Ann Ricketts decides to do some Christmas shopping in the morning. She grabs her black purse and leaves her home in Des Moines, Iowa. She buys gifts for her kids and even decides to treat herself, choosing a special dress for New Year's Eve. Unfortunately, she never got the chance to wrap those presents. Beth Ann never returned home, and a series of strange events unfolded after her disappearance. Later that same day, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, a fire broke out in her house. In her bedroom, to be more precise, and the firefighters couldn't determine its cause. On Christmas Eve, TV networks in Des Moines were discussing Beth Ann's disappearance. Shortly after her story aired, her boyfriend called the police and informed them that she wasn't missing after all. According to him, Beth Ann called him, saying that she was okay and didn't want to be found. Unfortunately, she hasn't spoken with friends or relatives since that holiday, not even her 2 daughters and her son. And that's weird to say the least. So, her family is still searching for the answers to this mystery.
It's winter, 1980. We're in the small town of Lyngby. 19-year-old Jean Hilliard is driving home after meeting with a friend. She takes a shortcut and turns into an icy, slippery road. In the dark, she loses control of the rear-wheel drive car. The vehicle crashes into a ditch. Emergency lights, snowfall, night, and a hard frost. Jean gets out of the vehicle. She's wearing only a light winter coat, mittens, and cowboy boots. The air temperature is much lower than in a freezer. Jean is sure that her friend lives nearby, so she goes that way. She climbs a high hill and realizes she's taken the wrong route. It seems she's gotten lost. The girl wanders a couple more miles and notices her other friend's house in the distance. Freezing, she walks there. Then everything turns black. Jean loses consciousness. The next morning, rancher Wally Nelson wakes up in a great mood. It's the holiday season. There's a winter fairy tale outside the window. He leaves his house and notices the body of Jean Hilliard lying just a few feet from his porch. Wally approaches the girl, shakes her, and is horrified. Her body is stiff and cold like frozen wood. Her eyes are open and don't move. Her hair is frozen. She just doesn't look alive. But Wally sees that she's still breathing. Jean has managed to survive. Wally wants to put her in his car to bring her to the doctor, but the girl's body doesn't bend and can't fit into the auto. It feels like a statue. He takes a bigger car and rushes to the hospital as fast as possible. The doctors take Jean, but they don't think she has any chance to make it. Her hand is so hard and frozen that no needle can penetrate it. A low temperature, glassy eyes, and muscles as hard as stone are all the results of emergency mode. Her body has directed all the blood to the vital organs to ensure their functioning. That's why other parts of her body look so lifeless, and her skin and muscles don't react to anything. The doctors decide to put heating pads on the girl to warm her up. Her family hopes for her recovery, but right now, all they can do is just wait. Frostbite is so dangerous because all that frozen liquid begins to expand. Fill a small bottle with water and put it in the freezer for a few hours. Then take it out, and you'll see that the bottle seems to have expanded or even cracked because of the increased volume of the liquid. The same thing happens inside our bodies. We consist of almost 70% water. When it freezes, its particles turn into ice crystals and tear cell membranes. Ice fragments can stretch and destroy tissue. This is called frostbite. Also, our body can slow down all internal processes in extreme cold conditions to save strength and energy. The heart makes fewer beats, and the lungs stop consuming lots of oxygen. Metabolism slows down. It happened with Jean, and perhaps it is what saved her life that day. She was lying in the snow in severe frost for about 6 hours. But why didn't the ice particles start destroying her cell membranes? How did her body withstand such damage and manage to survive? Back at the hospital, doctors are happy to watch Jean get better. Warm blood spreads through the frozen vessels and brings her body back to life. Surprisingly, ice crystals haven't damaged her muscles and skin. A few hours later, the girl regains consciousness. By noon, she starts talking. Jean doesn't know what happened. She remembers walking to her friend's house and then waking up in the hospital. What worries her most right now is that her father's car is somewhere in a ditch. As it turns out, The girl fell down and crawled on all fours to Wally Nelson's house. She doesn't remember it, but apparently her brain activated the survival instinct that night. Unfortunately, she didn't manage to crawl the last few feet. Jean passed out at the door and stayed there for 6 hours. Doctors examine the girl and understand that she's completely healthy. Soon, she's discharged from the hospital. This case isn't unique. One professor of emergency medicine, David Plummer, said he'd seen about 12 similar cases over the past 10 years when patients had survived severe frostbite. Jean returns home and finds out that she has become famous. People write about her in newspapers, want to interview her, and film documentary shows. Her case has attracted the attention of many doctors around the world, but no one has been able to find out exactly how she managed to survive. In the case of humans, such recoveries seem like an absolute miracle. But many creatures of the natural world can adapt their bodies to extreme conditions. One of them is the tree frog. These animals live mainly in temperate and tropical parts of Eurasia. Sometimes they have to contend with cold weather. Their body injects glucose into the bloodstream when they feel they're freezing, and the content of their cells turns into syrup. Sugar lowers the freezing point of water. So, tree frogs have adapted to such conditions. The water outside their cells can freeze. Their bodies can get as hard as ice cubes, but they will be alive, feeling great. Then, when it gets warmer, they fully recover. The blood fills their body and puts all their muscles in motion. But one of the most amazing animals that can withstand freezing temperatures is the ghoulish icefish. It's transparent and somewhat like a jellyfish. It swims in the dark, cold Antarctic waters. The ghoulish icefish feels comfortable there because of the antifreeze in its body. More precisely, it's a unique substance that is like antifreeze in its functions. This liquid doesn't allow the animal's cells, organs, and the whole body to freeze. There are no red blood cells in the fish's blood that transport oxygen throughout its body. This is the only vertebrate with such a superpower. There are organisms on our planet that use the cold to prolong their life. Scientists have found some of them in the ice of Siberia. Those are microscopic, multi-celled creatures, like small worms, that can live in a freezer for about 10 years. But the worms from Siberia were about 24,000 years old. The scientists transported them to the laboratory and thawed them. The worms came to life and began to multiply immediately after all those centuries of sleep. Their bodies can go into cryptobiosis. This is when an entire frozen organism has minimal vital functions. The analysis showed that the worms could stay in this mode for tens of thousands of years. And there are many such animals on our planet. Also, these creatures are some of the world's most resistant to radiation. They are practically invulnerable. Now back to our story. It's possible that Jean Hilliard's body went into short cryptobiosis. Perhaps there was some non-freezing liquid in the girl's blood, but no one knows for sure. These days, she has an ordinary job and almost doesn't remember that day. Further research on this topic can help scientists create special medicines that can help in freezing temperatures. Just imagine that you could safely go outside in the winter wearing a t-shirt and a pair of shorts. Steam would be coming off your body, and the ice under your feet would be melting. You'd feel hot inside. A dream, perhaps. But realistically, winter coat manufacturers would, of course, never allow it.
In a frosty Canadian park, hidden deep beneath layers of thick ice, scientists discovered a bizarre skeleton they named the Frozen Dragon. The skeleton had been in the frozen ice for millions of years. It took experts decades to work out the species of this strange fossil. It was identified as a new genus of pterosaur. Pterosaurs were massive flying reptiles with wingspans of over 16 feet. Their heads were 3.5 times the size of their bodies. Pterosaurs lived 76 million years ago when they soared above the dinosaurs. Scientists described them as the biggest, meanest, and most bizarre animals that ever flew. The new genus has been named Cryodragon boreas, which translates to frozen dragon of the north winds. In 2013, a young mountaineer was climbing one of the tallest mountains in Western Europe, Mont Blanc. He noticed a strange metal box poking out of the snow. The mountaineer pried the box open and found that it was filled with precious rubies, emeralds, and sapphires. The climber immediately handed the box to the authorities. It was discovered that the box likely belonged to a passenger on one of 2 flights from India that crashed into the mountain over 50 years ago. The box was valued to be worth over $200,000, and authorities are still searching for the heir to the small box of treasures. In northwest Siberia in 2007, a reindeer herder was on an outing with his sons when he noticed something strange in the ice. The man realized it was a frozen mammoth calf and immediately contacted the local museum. The calf was named Luba and was the best preserved mammoth mummy in the world at the time of its discovery. Luba had been in the ice for 41,800 years and is around 30 to 35 days old. From trunk to tail, the mammoth calf is roughly the same size as a large calf. If you're interested in seeing for yourself, Luba travels to museums all around the world. On the frozen continent of Antarctica, covered in layers of ice and snow, is Mount Erebus, the frozen volcano. The volcano was discovered in the middle of an eruption in 1841 by explorers on an Arctic expedition. The volcano is over 12,000 feet tall and has been active for the last 1.3 million years. Deep within the middle of the volcano is a huge crater filled with large volumes of molten lava. The volcano has occasional explosions, which means it's classified as being in continuing eruption. However, these eruptions are nothing to worry about because they're generally rather small. Back in 1991, 2 hikers were traveling across the Italian Alps when they stumbled across a body that they presumed to belong to a recently lost hiker. The duo trudged back down the mountain to report their unfortunate findings. Once the remains were recovered, it was clear that the body was not recent at all. Scientists determined that the Iceman was more than 5,000 years old and named him Otzi. The discovery was unlike anything scientists had ever before seen because the body was so well preserved. For years, Otzi was studied by scientists who discovered that our ancestors have a lot more in common with us than we ever knew before. Otzi was covered in ink body art. Research done on the contents of his stomach revealed that his last meal was dry cured meat, similar to the bacon we eat today. Otzi has at least 19 relatives living today, somewhere in Central Europe. Scientists were researching ancient squirrel burrows in Siberia when they came across something interesting. One of the squirrels had hidden away precious seeds deep beneath the ground. The seeds had been encased in ice for 32,000 years. The seeds were for the flower Silene stenophilia, which had long since gone extinct. Amazingly, scientists were able to recover plant tissue from inside the seeds and grow an entire crop of flowers. They've since reintroduced the previously extinct flower to natural habitats all across the world. In 1930, a team of Norwegian scientists sailed around the Arctic Ocean, conducting research on the seas and glaciers. They reached White Island, a dangerous and icy land no human had set foot on before, or so they thought. The scientists were shocked to discover the tip of a small boat sticking out of the snow. Frozen inside the boat, they found scientific equipment and various personal items, including a jacket monogrammed S.A. Undre. They had discovered the wreck of the famous Undre Arctic balloon expedition. In 1897, Swedish explorers, led by Undre, attempted to travel to the North Pole by hydrogen balloon. No one had ever heard from them ever again. People only found out what happened to them when the wreck was discovered 33 years later. It turns out that the balloon had crashed on White Island only 2 days after departing from Sweden. The explorers traveled along the island on a small makeshift boat, but were unable to make it any further. The best preserved woolly mammoth ever found was discovered in an area of permafrost in Siberia in 2010. Scientists named the frozen mammoth Yucca after the small village near where it was found. Yucca had been frozen for 39,000 years and is thought to have been around 6 to 8 years old. Because Yucca is so well preserved, it has been studied for years and provided new information about mammoths. In 2019, scientists reported that they were able to activate cells taken from Yucca's tissue. Maybe one day we'll have woolly mammoths roaming the land. From looking at pictures and videos of Antarctica, the continent appears to be freezing cold, covered in snow, and flat, except for a few small hills. Scientists believe that too. When studying the Gomburtsev Mountains in the early 2000s, they were shocked to discover that the small rocky hills were actually the peak of a gigantic mountain formation under a mile of snow. Using radar technology, researchers worked out that the mountains are really around 10,000 feet tall and sprawl across 750 miles. This is around the same size as the European Alps, except hidden under tons of ice and snow. At a gold mine in Siberia, a businessman was examining a nearby river when he noticed something interesting in the frost. It was a small woolly rhino calf that was later named Sasha. The woolly rhino has been extinct for 15,000 years. It's thought that Sasha could have been frozen in the ice for up to 39,000 years. Sasha is unique because it's the only full-body woolly rhino to have ever been discovered. Glaciers around the northern Italian town of Pelo have begun to melt. Artifacts from decades and even centuries ago have been discovered pouring out of the ice. Personal belongings from soldiers have been found, things like diaries, photographs, and even love letters. Historians have even uncovered an entire cabin preserved beneath the ice. The cabin was filled with hard metal helmets and clothes. In 1845, Sir John Franklin embarked on an ill-fated expedition to the North Pole. The crew traveled on 2 ships, HMS Erebus and the ironically named HMS Terror. The expedition met with disaster, and both ships were lost to the icy waters. In 2016, the HMS Terror was discovered by a team of researchers. Despite being lost for 170 years, the freezing cold waters had maintained the ship in pristine condition. Scientists described the ship as frozen in time. Dinner plates and glasses were still on shelves, beds and desks were still in order, and even the passengers' luggage appeared to be in good condition. The HMS Erebus was also discovered nearby, but due to changing water conditions, the ship wasn't in great shape. The glacial ice surrounding a mountain passageway in Norway that was notoriously used by the Vikings has revealed hundreds of ancient artifacts. One of these artifacts was a giant unopened wooden box that was welded together. Researchers were beside themselves with anticipation, waiting to open this box. They believed it would be filled with Viking treasures or artifacts that would give us an insight into ancient society. When they opened the box, all that was inside was a plain old beeswax candle. It turns out that this box wasn't actually as old as they thought it was. By analyzing the candle, they discovered that the box dates back to the 17th century. The age of the Vikings had ended by the 11th century. It's likely that the candle box belonged to a farmer who was shipping it from his summer farm to his winter farm to light up the long nights.
A whopping 1/3 of healthy teens and adults say they often feel super sleepy and like they have no energy. Let's get to the root of why we're all so tired. Pardon me. First off, you need to avoid eating too many refined carbs like sugar. It gives you a rapid energy fix and your blood sugar levels shoot up. But this is temporary, and it quickly comes back down. This is what we call a sugar crash. Craving quick energy leads us into a bad cycle of being energized and then quickly crashing. That's why eating too many sugary foods can actually make you super tired throughout the day. Think of it as plugging your phone in to charge when the battery is low. It works fine when it's plugged in, but take it off charge and the battery level quickly drops. Reducing the amount of sugar and processed carbs you have in your meals and snacks will give you way more energy throughout the day. Replacing those chocolate snacks with vegetables is going to make you feel way more alert during the day. Food has a huge impact on your energy levels. You get a lot of your energy from calories. If you don't eat enough of these calories, your metabolism slows down so that you can save the little energy that you have. This can make you feel and even look like a zombie. Teenage boys need around 2,800 calories each day, while girls need 2,200. When you're done doing all that growing and turn into an adult, that number drops down to 2,500 calories for men and just 2,000 for women. Protein is also really important for boosting your energy levels. It's found in meats, including beef, lamb, and chicken. Dairy products, eggs, and fish are also really great sources of protein. If you're tired, you should also be watching your caffeine intake. When you think an afternoon coffee or energy drink is the perfect thing to wake you up throughout the day, it can really mess with your sleep. Most people think caffeine stays in our system for around 5 to 7 hours. That's why everyone says don't drink coffee before bed. But in reality, caffeine stays in our bodies for double that amount of time. That's between 10 and 14 hours. Let's say you drink a caffeinated drink by 3 p.m. By 10 p.m., when you're winding down for bed, half of that caffeine is still in your system, giving you an energy boost when you really don't need it. That means by 4 a.m., a whopping quarter of the caffeine from your drink is still in your system. This is sure to make you toss and turn throughout the night. There is a simple fix for this one. Just avoid any energy drinks or coffee after lunchtime. They say you need around 8 hours of sleep to feel refreshed the next day. Younger people need even more than that. Here's where a lot of us are going wrong. If you need to wake up at 7 a.m. for school, you go to bed at 11 p.m. to get that 8 hours of sleep. But that's not taking into account you could spend over a half an hour falling asleep. Work out on average how long it takes you to doze off and add this on to your 8-hour sleep time. After a couple of weeks of doing this, you'll feel much more refreshed. It's also a bad idea to climb into bed and open up Netflix before you hit the hay. Your bed is solely a place to sleep. Your bright laptop screen won't help you drift off either. You should ideally avoid using any screens that give off blue or white lights at least an hour before bed, ideally more. This includes your phone, laptop, and TV too. Screens prevent your brain from releasing the sleep hormone, which is called melatonin, making it difficult for your body to know when it's time to doze off. Your body gets confused and thinks that your screen light is sunlight, assuming it's daytime. This is why it keeps you awake and supplies your brain with energy. Try taking it one step further and making your bedroom an electronic-free zone. You can swap that phone screen for a good book, and it should help you drift off to slumberland a lot quicker. Audiobooks can also work really well to help you doze off. Another tip you can try to ensure you're getting as much sleep as possible is to get a blackout blind. If you don't want to spend any money, you can also just take a dark sheet or towel to cover your window. This way, when the light starts to come into your room in the earlier hours of the morning, it doesn't wake you, and you can carry on dreaming about puppies and kittens, or whatever. Exercise is another super important thing to keep us energized throughout the day. It also helps us sleep. You might think that if you get home tired after school or work, that lying on the couch could help you recharge your batteries. But although it's the last thing you want to do, try a little exercise instead. Even just 15 minutes will do. This doesn't mean you have to start going to the gym every day. Try incorporating a daily walk into your schedule. It doesn't need to be long. A half an hour round trip is all it takes. There are 3 really easy ways to get a bit more active during the day. Walk instead of jumping in the car for short journeys. Switch the elevator for the stairs. Stand rather than sit down whenever possible. If you work in an office or at home, try a standing desk. Jumping jacks are an easy exercise you can add to your daily routine. They work the whole body and get your blood pumping. You don't need any equipment either, so they're great for when that midday slump hits you in the office. A solid sleeping pattern is also super important for being more alert every day. Try going to bed at the same time every night. then waking up at a set time each morning too. Adults who go to bed at the same time on weekdays and weekends are generally less tired throughout the day and have less difficulty falling asleep at night. Just like plants wilting when they don't get enough water, our bodies can't function properly when we need some H2O. Drinking lots of water throughout the day will help you keep those energy levels up high, whether you're about to climb Mount Everest or just shopping at the local store. Stress uses up a lot of that energy you've worked to build up. If you've got an assignment due or a big exam coming up, try these tips to de-stress. Listen to your favorite tunes. Read a great book. Hang out with your best friends. Try out yoga or meditation. There's a bunch of free at-home yoga tutorials online. Meditation is super simple too. Just find a calm place to sit and get comfortable. Focus on your breath, slowly breathing in and out. You're going to want to set a time limit as well. If you're new to meditation, start with a small amount, like 5 or 10 minutes. There's a whole bunch of meditation sounds on the internet to help keep you calm and focused too. Whatever relaxes you is a surefire way to feel refreshed and boost those energy levels. Now, if you've tried all of this and you're still feeling tired, there may be another hidden reason. Food intolerances can make you feel super sluggish and affect your energy and sleep. Gluten, dairy, or egg intolerance is really common. You also get loads of your energy from vitamins. You can get iron from spinach, broccoli, red meat, and turkey. Vitamin D comes mostly from mushrooms, fatty fish, seafood, and most importantly, sunshine. Milk, eggs, and beef are great sources of B12. If changing your diet is too much to ask, though, you can always pick up vitamin supplements from your local health store. This will do the trick too.
The holiday spirit comes with holiday decorations. Sparkling lights, garlands, and snow globes are all part of it. Our furry friends like to play with them too. But did you know that this stuff has some hidden dangers? Let's take a closer look at pet safety tips in your household, both during holiday times and any other time of the year. Number 1 is tinsel. It's a go-to option to spread a celebration vibe. Tinsel is also known to spread all over the place. You might have noticed this if you trimmed a tree with it. Pets, especially cats, love such decorations. Yet, if they eat a piece of tinsel, it can cause intestinal problems. Not to mention emotional effects. The consequences can cost a lot money-wise too. Surgery to remove a foreign object can cost hundreds of dollars. Don't underestimate the appeal of a shiny object in the room, and keep your eye on your pets. Number 2 is decorative lights. Once you're done, you put them in the box, and they spend the whole year there, tangled. When you open the box next year, you'll have a hard time untangling them. But while you're unpacking, your pets can eat the lights or get an electric shock. To avoid this, you can bundle up loose cords with protective plastic covers and hang the lights in places your pets can't easily reach. Some people have a snow globe collection. They get these balls as souvenirs from tourist places they go to. Others take them out of a box with holiday decorations at certain times of the year. These fragile things can easily break. Don't ask me how I know this. Some snow globes contain ingredients that are hazardous not only to pets, but also to younger family members. Numerous veterinary sources are full of the same warning. Keep your pets away from snow globes. That being said, the liquid inside snow globes might not be just pure water. It often contains 2% ethylene glycol, and it turns out it has a sweet smell that can lure pets to taste it. Number 4 is about Christmas trees and how they can turn into pet-friendly decor. Vets say that artificial trees and garlands can be safer than real ones. These trees don't carry the outdoor scent with them, so smell-wise, they don't attract your pets that much. Here, the important part is not to buy a flocked or snow-covered artificial tree. These sprinkles, again, can be harmful to pets. If you're not into buying artificial trees, you can attach a fishing line to the tree and hang it on the ceiling to stabilize it. As for the water for the tree, your pet might want to taste it. It's best not to add aspirin or other things to this water. You can cover the reservoir with foil to keep your animals away. Lastly, you can temporarily put a large water bowl in the same room as the tree. If your pet gets thirsty, they can go to their bowl instead of the reservoir. You can consider putting a barrier in front of the tree to make it less accessible. But some cats are wild. They'll just take it as a challenge, and they'll easily get over most obstacles. Yet, most of them don't want to bother with double-sided sticky tape. You can try that. When I talked about snow globes, it included magnets too. I wonder whether magnets can be dangerous for pets. We use them for various purposes in our homes. For starters, with their help, we showcase our photos or notes on the fridge door. Our four-pawed friends can easily get their paws on it. These fridge magnets might not be as harmful as so-called rare earth magnets, though. Neodymium magnets, for example, are the real danger. These kinds of magnets are very powerful. If you accidentally pinch your body parts, they can injure you. Imagine these magnets as warriors. When they get too close to each other, they can strike with a super force to chip and shatter regular magnets. You wouldn't want that type of magnet near your pets or little members of your family. Rare earth magnets are normally used in stuff like hard disks, locks for doors, or headphones, but they're also used as toys. These magnets aren't especially toxic, so if your dog accidentally eats one of them, the magnet may leave its body in a natural way. But what if it eats two super powerful magnets? I don't want to get into the details of this scenario. The intestines loop back and forth in the abdomen, and if these magnets get too close to each other, yeah. Apparently, pennies made later than 1982 are also hazardous. They contain high levels of zinc. You might think, isn't zinc an essential mineral for our body? Yes, for growth, wound healing, and many more aspects. Yet, the body needs a small amount of zinc. Too much can cause poisoning. Zinc is found in many metal objects, such as bolts, zippers, and jewelry. If you live in the US, you should know that pennies minted after 1982 have zinc cores covered in copper plating. One of the most common causes of zinc poisoning in pets is these pennies. Household plants and flower bouquets can also be dangerous. Let's say you have a bouquet of tulips that you want to keep, and your cat looks so funny trying to push the vase off the table. You shouldn't let curiosity get the best of your cat. Aloe vera, Daphne, daylily, oh, the list is long. The moral of the story is, kittens are curious and shouldn't eat plants or flowers because they can be toxic for their fluffy bodies. The next one is batteries. The acidic material inside them can leak if they get blasted. Imagine your dog chewing them accidentally. Severe consequences and immediate surgery would be the next step. When I say batteries, I also mean stuff like remotes, watches, and hearing aids. They're also powered by batteries. The next item on the list is food. Yeah, I know how hard it can be sometimes to eat while your pet gives you the look. I want to taste that too. Give me a bite, human, please. Okay, allow me to explain the dangers so that you can resist the temptation to share your food with your bestie. Avocado is toxic to birds and rabbits. Apple seeds and almonds are bad for hamsters. One myth is that rabbits eat lettuce, but in reality, you shouldn't include some types of lettuce in their diet. For example, iceberg lettuce. It contains lactocarium. It can be harmful if your animal eats too much of it. Another myth is that cats should drink milk. Nope. Cow's milk is not good for cats because, surprise, most cats are lactose intolerant. Chocolate, garlic, grapes, and raisins can also be dangerous to pets. How toxic something is depends on several factors, like the species of your pet and how much of the potentially harmful thing the animal has eaten. At the end of the day, you know your pet better than anyone. You probably already know how long it takes them to visit their litter box or how it smells. So always be prepared. Watch your pet's behavior. Do they have a decreased appetite? It's best to play it safe. When I say pets, I picture animals like dogs, cats, and hamsters. But some people have exotic pets, such as bears, owls, or crocodiles. the Global Federation of Animal Sanctuaries believes that 5,000 tigers are held by people in the United States alone. This number includes zoos, but the majority of them live with private owners. Mountain lions are also commonly seen among exotic pets. Maybe this is why from time to time, we encounter news telling us that something went wrong with private owners of wild animals. Do you have a pet? If you do, what's their name? Why not let us know in the comments?
Do you want to build a snowman? One that won't melt and will stay with you no matter the weather? And you don't need to wait for the snow to build it either. You're intrigued, right? Then let me guide you through every step of this fun project. You should get a few things ready. Grab a pen and some paper because I'm listing all the materials you'll need. Paper clay, acrylic paints, aluminum foil, some wires, toothpicks, glue, and some brushes for applying the paint as well as giving texture to your mini figurine. Probably to your surprise, you're not only going to use paper clay to make the body parts of the little snow guy. You'll have to start with aluminum foil. Trust me, it's going to make things so much easier for you, even if you're not a professional sculptor. And not to mention, cheaper too. You'll just have to create the shape by folding the foil first. And the next step will be wrapping it with paper clay. Now, as you can guess, the smallest ball is going to be the head of your snowman and the part you'll need to work on the most. You'll want it to look its best after all. The first thing to do is to carve out small holes for the eyes. Making the mouth is simpler. With the help of your shaping tools, just make a line as a base and follow my lead to give it some details and depth. Then glue 2 teeny tiny clay balls to these holes. This will make the snowman's face look more realistic than just painting eyes on it. After all, eyes are windows to the soul. Admit it, this reminds you of some Tim Burton movie, huh? Hey, can't forget about the carrot nose. And no, we're not using real carrots here. Everything is coming